openings on the New York State Board of Regents. Okay. Section 202 of the Education Law provides for the election of the legislature, by the legislature, for members to the Board of Regents. There are a total of 17 regents who are elected to 5-year terms. 13 are elected by judicial district, and 4 are elected for at-large positions. Now, today we're interviewing for Judicial District 8, 9, 10, and for some of the at-large vacancies. The law further provides that regents must be elected by concurrent resolution of the legislature or by joint session of the legislature. That generally happens, or it does happen, either the first or second Tuesday in March. The Board of Regents oversees the entire educational enterprise of the state of New York. The board's most prominent role is setting learning standards for elementary and secondary education. But the board also regulates 56 licensed professions and registers academic programs for all colleges and universities, including the SUNY and CUNY systems. Also within the purview of the Board of Regents are public libraries, museums, historical societies, the State Library, the State Archives, public broadcasting, vocational rehabilitation, and the regulation of proprietary vocational schools. The Board of Regents derives its authority from the New York State Constitution and Education Law. Specifically, Section 207 of the Education Law grants the board power to exercise legislative functions concerning educational policies and to establish rules for implementing those policies. At this particular time, before we begin with the first interview, I would turn to my colleague, Senator Mayer, who's chairperson of the Senate Education Committee, if she has any opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Chair Benedetto. It's a pleasure to be here. Welcome to our first candidate. This is an extremely important task to be on the Board of Regents. It's taken on particular import now, given the administration in Washington's interest in potentially eliminating the U.S. Department of Education, and because the issues that the regents deal with are so critical, not only to our K through 12 system, but our higher ed system, the professions, and so many other aspects of civic life and educational life here in New York State. I commend every candidate for coming forward and putting themselves forward for consideration. I look forward to hearing your answers and your brief opening statement. And I, again, thank you to my colleagues for being present and understanding how real import this has to the future of New York State's commitment to public education. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I now turn to the chairperson of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, my colleague, Assemblywoman Alicia Heineman.
Good morning and welcome. I'm Assemblymember Alicia Heineman, Chair of Higher Education, and I'll just say ditto to what my colleague said, that this is a really important position, setting policy for education for the state of New York. We look forward to what you have to say today, and wish you the best. Thank you.
And last but not least, not last, the chairperson of the Senate New York City Education Committee, Senator John Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm always delighted to join our distinguished colleagues here in looking at people who would like to be regents here in New York State. The regents are the people we entrust with the education policy for all of New York State's 2.5 million school kids. So it's a pretty awesome responsibility, and I thank all the candidates for putting themselves forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And then lastly, we turn to Senator Celia Bino, who's with us this morning. Would you have any opening remarks, Senator?
I would like to greet you. Thank you for extending yourself for a position of great importance at a time such as this. And I look forward to hearing from you in your opening statement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. And now for the interview. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Ved Shavara? Shava. Mr. Shavra. Okay. We thank you for coming forward, sir. Basically, we just want to have a conversation with you, okay? You'll make an opening statement, okay? We'll ask you to keep it within the 3-minute time, and if you go over that, I'll gently try to remind you to move on, and we'll then ask you some questions, okay? So we just want you to relax and have a nice conversation. And sir, the time is yours. Make your opening statement. Why you want to be a regent.
Is that okay? Can you hear me? Okay. And I have master's degrees in mathematics, education, and physics. I have taught, I've taught at the universities here and colleges, high schools, community colleges. As you can see, my resume, high school, early college, and education department for the last 18 years in the Office of State Assessment. I feel I've seen education from every angle. I have also on the Board of Education for 19 years. I was board president, and I was also a member of the Dutchess County Board of Education for 6 years, elected member. So I feel that I have seen education from probably almost every aspect, every angle in New York State. This is the next opportunity that I think that I can use all my experience and education to be part of a team where I can contribute to the education of children, which is very important for me. It's a serious matter, as we all know in education, that in our country we need to do better. I mean, we have been doing quite good, but I think we can do better. And as you can see, we see all these news items, NIP test and all that our children are falling behind. So even though our universities are the best in the world, all of us need to work a little bit to make sure that all our children, no matter what background they come from, we fulfill their needs and make sure that they compete with the rest of the world. I'm here, I'd like to confine within 3 minutes, but I feel that the reason of my application is that I feel that I can contribute. I also bring perspective from the Indian community that I belong to in education. That I think we have a lot to say. And seeing education in this country from high school, college, universities, high school, early college, I had my very good experience at Bard High School, early college in Manhattan, where we took children from high school and taught them college courses. I think that the transition, I joined them right from the very beginning, and I was there for a couple of years to make sure how the transition works. And I've taught at SUNY for many, many years, New Paltz and SUNY Stony Brook. And I've taught at university, I've taught at high school, even though I taught calculus, but I taught in high school. I've seen that environment. And I have been here at the education department, which I'm retiring on March 15th. And I thought that was a good time for me to move on and be part of a team, contribute from my side. Thank you. Exactly 3 minutes, I think.
I thank you very much for your opening statement, sir. Okay. I'll turn this now over to Senator Mayer. Do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for your opening, and congratulations on your very extensive resume. So Judicial District 9 is a very broad geographic space with both urban, suburban, and rural schools. I represent a portion of it. I have several urban school districts, including Yonkers, New Rochelle, Portchester, White Plains. I wonder, how familiar are you with the various districts within this region? Have you visited any of these schools? Are you familiar with the results that they show on math and ELA? And how familiar are you with the region itself?
Oh, you mean District 9? You're from that side too? is
I'm
it?
from Westchester.
Okay. Yeah, I am very, very familiar with that area. As I said, I represented one of the largest school districts, Wappingers Board of Education. I was elected for 19 years. I was board president. And I also served on the Dutchess County Board of Education for 6 years. So it's a totally different, as you know, it's a kind of business situation. So I think that I know people there, I belong there, and I think I can represent them very well. I know the problems, I know what kind of help they need, and I know their perspective, their thinking. So does that answer your question?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We welcome Renker on the Assembly Education, Assemblyman Smith. Thank you for being here.
Hi.
Thank you.
Ms. Heidman, you have any questions? for-
Yes, I do. First of all, you got your master's at New Paltz, my alma mater, great, and
Yes.
you also taught there. Your background, it's heavily math, and you helped started the Bard Early College. So, in the capacity of a regents, there are more and more schools that would like to see the early college programs. What would you say is the one fundamental thing in high school students being exposed to programs such as what Bard Early College High School had?
You mean by teaching at New Paltz and understanding the transition from high school to college?
No, what would you say, because you helped start the Bard College Early High School, what would you say now when most schools, high schools, are looking to expose students to programs that offer early college opportunities? As a regent, you'd have a lot of influence in that. Why do you think that's important?
The program at SUNY New Paltz, it has changed a lot. You know, in the beginning when I joined there were students coming from high schools, and there is so discrepancy between, two students coming from two different high schools, both getting 90% or so, but their ability was so different. So when we gave them the entrance test, we realized that there was no kind of commonality, standard was not the same, because somebody was giving very high grades, 90% to students who were not really that much proficient in math. So we had to create courses below calculus level. We created college algebra course, we created basic algebra course to fulfill their needs. So we brought them at par to that level. I think now the situation is slightly different since we have our state assessments, that we can actually compare it much better than we could compare it before. So I've seen that transition, I've seen that difficulty at New Paltz. I think they're in better shape now, even though I'm not teaching there. But I talk to my colleagues, old colleagues. But in the beginning, when I started in '85, it was very different. The high school scores had no meaning. They come and they both have the same score, but their ability was far different. So we had to give local tests to make sure that, to see who can take calculus, who can take pre-calculus, and who cannot. So we offered them basic courses in algebra. Because for calculus, you need to have very strong algebraic skills and trigonometrical skills. So my basic field was calculus and applied mathematics. But we saw these children coming from high schools, and we had to fill their gaps and make sure that they can come at par.
Thank you, sir. Senator Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Shrava, for putting yourself forward. You have this very extensive resume on paper. I question the time frame of it all, because there are a couple of isolated dates. The heading of your work teaching experience says 2007 until now. So in this great scheme of things, that seems to be a limited time frame. And you list a number of colleges, but you're a lecturer, right? Not a professor. And you got your educational degree in 2016. So I'm not sure how much experience you have at any of these things. I think it looks like, I would guess that you've spent several years at SED. Is that correct? Like, how many years have you been at SED?
How many years?
Yes. You're currently at SED. That's what your resume looks like.
I'm sorry, there's a lot of echo here.
Are you currently at the State Education Department?
Yeah, right, I am, yeah.
How
I'm
long have you
retiring
been
in
there?
March.
Huh?
I'm retiring next month from
Okay, so how long have you been at the State Education?
18 years.
18 years. So that's the bulk of your experience, right? Because were you teaching while you were at SED, or were you teaching before that?
I taught one course at Hudson Valley Community College one semester, and then I realized
At
that
which college?
Hudson Valley Community College.
Okay.
Part-time while I was working, but that's the only time, just one semester I taught at Hudson Valley. And then I realized that it was getting tough for me to, even though I leave at 3:30 and my class was at 4:30, but I thought that was not convenient for me, so I didn't teach after that.
Okay, so I think based on what you said, I think the bulk of your experience is as a content specialist towards mathematics. You mentioned calculus a lot in the State Education Department. Is that accurate, or is there more substance to all the other listings that you have?
Sorry, I didn't get the question. Education department, I came as a math content specialist, and my job is an assessment to make sure that the tests that we give to students, they follow the standard that we have, and the flow of the question. Sometimes we end up, a lot of times, most of the time, we actually end up rewriting questions that we get from vendors.
Is that experience well-rounded enough to be a regent? I mean, a regent is a very accomplished person in the field of education.
Sorry, can you repeat what? There is echo here, is it something?
I can, let me rephrase.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Do you think that, my assessment is that the bulk of your education experience is as a specialist, specifically an examination specialist at the State Education Department? for 18 years.
Right.
You list many other positions. There are no dates. My guess is that they are relatively short and isolated. So the bulk of your education experience doesn't, to me, and maybe you can prove me wrong, it doesn't seem to have much breadth, certainly to the point where we would consider somebody to be a state regent.
Yeah, I actually, yeah, I think you are asking me that if the department will be okay if I leave or something, is it? I don't get it, sorry, I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for
I'm so
being here.
sorry, yeah.
I want to say we've also been joined on the panel by two members of the Assembly, Kwani O'Farrell, and we welcome them, and Noah Burrows. Assemblyman, thank you for coming. Let's pass the questioning to our ranker, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. And as I was walking over, I was listening to your testimony. Now, I remember you. I think you came here last year. Can you expound a little bit, and I think maybe because I was blown away last time, but I didn't get a chance to ask you about this. In your resume, it says that you wrote the entire curriculum for high school and college for mathematics and chemistry in Western Samoa. You worked for the government of Western
Yeah,
Samoa. Is that a
actually,
similar position?
I taught Peace Corps teachers in Fiji, and then I got this opportunity to work in Western Samoa for a few years for the government of Western Samoa. Before in Samoa University, before I came to Iowa and I started teaching at the university in Iowa, I was hired as assistant professor to teach graduate courses in partial differential equations. And then when I moved here from Iowa to New York, I had to start all over again, at New Paltz, SUNY New Paltz.
So part of what the Board of Regents handles and the State Education Department is licensing. Now, you work for the State Education Department. What exactly you assessment and testing? It seems that did you have to go through a relicensing program when you came to the United States and then when you came to the state of New York? Did you have to?
At the State Education Department?
Right, to teach in New York, because I see, and there's no dates, but I do see you taught at many institutions.
State Education Department, actually, I came as a content specialist. My job is mathematics, and with my physics background, I found myself, very helpful because, sometimes applied mathematics is more science also, and that, so I think
So let me ask you a question. Are you involved with the creation of the Regents exams? Integrated algebra, Algebra 2 trig, geometry, Math A and Math B back in the day?
we do mathematics assessment,
Right.
the testing.
Are you involved with the 3 through 8 grades, third grade through
3
eighth
to
grade?
8, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, 3 to 8 I'm assigned to, but I was appointed as 7 to 12. But when we all work together,
My time's running short, but do you have any theories or feelings on why students appear to be underperforming on those exams?
why students are underperforming, it's a very big question, but we have gone through a lot of changes here. When I came here, there were standards, and then we jumped on to Common Core, and that was a big challenge.
I apologize. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the panel? Then we want to thank you for coming here. You were here last year.
I know.
You impressed us last year. You impressed us again today. We thank you for taking your time out and wanting to serve. And you will be notified over the next following weeks. So we thank you very much for coming here.
Thank you. Thank you. I had some hearing problem. I apologize.
No, that's fine. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please sit down and relax.
Thank you.
My name is Assemblyman Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the New York State Assembly Education Chairman Committee. And I'm sitting next to Senator Mayer, who I believe you are familiar with, and she's chairman of the Senate Higher Education Committee. I'm not going to introduce everybody, but we've got Assembly people, we've got Senate people here. We will be electing new regents in another couple of weeks after the interviews we have with you today. Okay? So what we ask is to give us brief opening remarks about yourself and why you should be a regent. Just relax. And then after we listen to what you say, we're going to open the floor out to anybody who wants to ask a question from the people at this table. Okay? So, at your leisure, sir, begin, and you try to stay within 3 minutes.
Within 3 minutes, oh boy.
There you go.
You need to push the mic.
And make sure the mic is on. I think it is. Is there a green light there?
Now it is.
There it is.
Ah, okay. Right. I just wrote a couple of notes. I thought this way, I'll try to keep myself to the 3 minutes no matter how long it takes me. Oh, sorry.
We have that, so don't pull that out. No, we have that.
It's okay. I wrote the notes, so I should know what I have to say. Appreciate your patience with the notes and coming up here. Kind of exciting to find my way here this morning, and I appreciate you making the time. My interest in the Board of Regents position comes from my own background. I have a Regents diploma. I'm quite proud from my own prep. I'm from Yonkers, the third largest city in New York. We're quite proud. My mother is also a proud recipient of a Regents diploma. So I'm a second generation Regents recipient, which runs in the family. And she's also a registered nurse. What I find interesting about that is that it ties in, it's also under the purview of the professional schools and exams that are overseen by the Regents. On my mother's family, I'm the second generation to be born in Yonkers and the fourth to live here. So we've been in Yonkers, we've had a presence for nearly a century. On my father's family, I'm the first to be born here and the third to live in Yonkers. And he's a proud SUNY alum. And ultimately, his career went all the way to becoming vice president for finance and controller at two different colleges, and also different ranks of professorship when he was adjunct versus full-time. So education has always been in the forefront of my experience at home with the family growing up. It's always been very important. And I thought you might be excited to see and I'm grateful that you had asked for a resume, what one of your Regents graduates has accomplished to date. I've done some things with it, and that's pretty exciting to me. I think this is a good point in my career where I can contribute to the Board of Regents And I understand that you oversee the entire state education department. It covers museums and libraries. I'm a proud Eagle Scout, and continuing in that vein, I've served a term on the Yonkers Public Library Board of Trustees, as well as its foundation. And currently, for 16 years now, I'm no longer on the library board, but that's where Senator Mayer and I had initially met. I've been 16 years now, I'm a standing commissioner on the City of Yonkers Commission on Human Rights, where I've served as chairman, and now I'm back in leadership as vice chairman of the commission. So I've worked with budgets on certain levels. I've also worked with staff, government employees, external relations. Professionally, my career has gone through working in the offices of institutional advancement for 3 different private schools, as well as college admissions. And there, in college admissions, I was also working as part of the tutoring faculty for their higher education Head Start program. So that was kind of exciting. So I have some educational, tangential background that I thought you might find interesting, as well as my professional background in nonprofit and in banking. And I know you have a finance and budget and audit committee. So I've worked on the corporate side as well as the nonprofit side. So that, I think, gives me a good background to sort of fit into to the different directions that you have. And what I find particularly beneficial to you is that I've noticed when I did my survey and my research, it appears that you may not have currently, and I'm not sure if you had before, a regent from Yonkers. You know, in the time since I started with the library board and the 16 years ongoing that I've been on the Commission on Human Rights, Yonkers has gone from the 4th largest city to the 3rd largest city. So, you know, I won't take all the credit. I'm happy to share it, but perhaps that perspective might be beneficial to you, having someone come from that size population, a major metropolitan area with a significant suburban area as well.
Mr. Fernandez, let me cut on in here and begin the questioning. You mentioned, and proudly and rightfully so, that you had a Regents diploma, okay? Regents diplomas have been called into question recently by the State Education Department and the Regents because they've had study made and coming up with various alternative routes to graduate. I'll be interested in hearing any opinions you may have on it. These alternative graduation routes, yeah.
To the graduation routes versus the strict route through the exam process?
Sure.
Oh, sure. You know, educationally, based on my background, and you can see in my resume, I'm a regulatory compliance guy, and I won't make any bones about that. I'm good with a fluid structure, though, and I know that it's not one size fits all, and that's why when I was in school, there were other students that were not on the Regents track, so they had that, you know, you could go the Regents way or not the Regents way, and you could still get a diploma. So to answer your question about alternatives, I feel that when it comes to the Regents program, the benefit of the Regents program is to give students who may succeed in an accelerated program an opportunity to do so, but not leaving other students behind by still having a traditional program for them. I think the diploma is significant. I think the track is significant. However, if you're looking for alternative ideas, I would not want to stray away from too far of an educational balance. Because that's what I thought was the whole point of the Regents classes that I took. Because all of my classes weren't Regents classes, but I did well in the ones that I needed to. And I benefited greatly from that because of the style and the program. But then there were other students that needed it a different way. So I think it's okay to have it, and I think it's okay to encourage learning and teaching. You shouldn't just be teaching to pass the Regents, you should be teaching knowledge. And I think people learn the same thing different ways. So I felt that having the option of the 2 tracks, if I didn't do well in the Regents, I was still had the option of graduating. And I felt good about that. And I think that's something that students probably would thrive on.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. Senator?
Nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for drawing attention to our city. 2 questions. One is, so District 9 not only includes Yonkers, it also includes East Ramapo. Last year, the Commissioner and the Board of Regents adopted a position with respect to taxing the town of East Ramapo as a result of what they said was the failure to sufficiently fund the traditional public schools. It was a contentious decision. It's likely to be litigated. I wonder if you're familiar with the situation in East Ramapo. It's because it's in Judicial District Number 9, and so that's question 1. The other is, as you know, Yonkers historically has at least the $60 million shortfall every year, the Yonkers Public Schools. I wonder what your thoughts are, if you were on the board, of how we would address this perennial shortfall, which we seem not to be able to avoid.
Oh, sure. First, with the situation in Ramapo with the schools, it's my impression, I'd need to look into it a little further, but I thought that they had always been having conversations about structure within the local government and the various groups that are out there within the overall community. So when it comes to what you said specifically, it was not funding certain schools. I thought they were doing that in favor of an alternative direction for students. I didn't think they were completely eliminating things, but they were trying to reform. And I thought
There
that's
wasn't
what's been happening.
elimination, it has to do with the imposition of a higher tax burden on the public schools. If you're not familiar, it's fine. I just wondered, since it's in District 9, what about the Yonkers structural shortfall? Yonkers Public Schools.
Well, with the Yonkers Public Schools and the structural shortfall, it seems that is an annual hurdle. And what I would really love to do in that situation is examine the finances all across. I mean, how is it that there is a shortfall, and what's causing it? You know, is there an imbalance? Are other districts receiving funding that maybe they're not utilizing to maximum efficiency, and therefore areas that could benefit from it should be getting a little more? And I think that needs to be done. You know, a specific examination of how the funds are being used all across. And you know, to probably stop with the competition for dollars and have everybody with the mindset that the Board of Regents is made up from districts throughout the state. So we're all New York, and it's all New York students. I don't think there should be any district at all that's the district that isn't doing well. We have the resources. So I think it's just identifying, you know, how best to use what we have. And I think we could do that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Assemblywoman Hyman.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez. You have a heavy development background, and part of the Regents is the breadth of the entire education, including the universities and professions. How do you see that background fitted into any of the committees that the Regents has?
Oh, well, in one of the schools that I worked at, I was part of the internal team working towards the Middle States accreditation evaluation process. So I understand the benefit of, again, conforming to the regulatory compliance, to making sure standards are being met and everybody is above board with what they're doing. In development, of course, you're regulated even more so than anyone else, because you're taking donations and doing things with that and dealing with the alumni base of each of the institutions. So there's more of a sacred trust in the development office. So using that mentality on the Board of Regents, part of my background is also successful in outreach. And I understand that part of this position may be working in the community, working with different groups, bringing everyone together to develop consensus and understand what people perceive the needs are versus what they actually are. So that's where development background comes in, weeding through that and bringing it all together to make sense of it. I hope that answered your question.
Good. Senator Lou.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for putting yourself forward. It's not easy. The regents are like super beings. We entrust regents with the education of 2.5 million school kids in New York State.
Of course.
So, apart from your coming from a family that values education and you being a proud Regents High School diploma holder yourself, it seems like the bulk of your experience is in bank operations and a number of different positions, both full-time and volunteer, as a fundraiser. What do you have to add to the education, the statewide education policy for the state of New York? And, maybe one thing I can add here is you mentioned you were a member of the Middle States Accreditation and Evaluation Community Relations Committee. Was that actually involved in responding and renewing the certification of the All Hallows Institute?
Yes, I was working with the president of All Hallows as well as the director of the department, just putting research and numbers and things together and providing that support for them. What I have to add, which is a question that I had on my mind long in advance of this morning. It's a good thing to have a Board of Regents where you have people with strong academic backgrounds, and I would certainly encourage that. However,
I think they all do, actually.
yes, and senior to my own, and happy to acknowledge that. However, the point I'd like to say is that research always shows that the best groups are those that have more of a mix of ideas from a broader spectrum. If you only had a group of bankers, for example, then you're going to be focused in that direction, finance, banking. If you only have a group of healthcare workers, then you're going to be talking about medical issues more than anything else. If everything is staffed by academics, it would be the same. So I bring a different perspective.
But it's important to have some kind of background in education as well. The chairman had
sure.
started asking you about the Regents exams, because you brought up the Regents yourself. There has been a multi-year effort on the part of the Board of Regents to redesign the graduation requirements. Are you familiar with any of those issues?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm in favor of not redoing the Regents exam itself. I think
What
the
do you mean
program is a good
redoing?
program.
They're not
No.
talking about redoing the exams. They're looking at the graduation requirements.
Right. And I thought that the exam was a function of a component of that. Some of the things I had read seemed to lead me to perceive that.
Yeah, they're
might
not
be
looking to
doing
do
away
the
with the exams.
They're not looking to redo the exams. They're looking to have different requirements, some not requiring the exams themselves.
Right.
My last question for you is, given that you have a great deal of fundraising experience, can you help out with the Yonkers shortfall?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, and I think Senator Liu hit a lot of the points that I was curious about. So I'm going to take it from your perspective. So you're saying that you offer a new flavor to the Board of Regents that we maybe haven't seen for a while. What are some new ideas that you think you could introduce to the Board of Regents? And as mentioned, it does seem like you have a very, different background. So give us some ideas that you might add that are maybe not being looked at right now.
Oh, sure. I've met our new superintendent of schools in Yonkers, and I've been acquainted with several of his predecessors. I think we could do some things together with that relationship locally that might open up a lot of perspectives and minds and bring in opinions.
Do you have anything specific that you would do? What's something maybe the schools aren't doing, could be doing, are doing well?
Relevant to the Board of Regents? Outreach?
Relative to an idea maybe you would suggest, maybe a program or something the schools you would like to see them provide that they're not currently providing?
A program in the schools that they're not currently providing. Oh, that's interesting. It seems that every time there are budget cuts, they seem to, and this may be a different answer than you were expecting, and I appreciate your patience with my own perspective. Every time there are budget cuts, it seems to be arts and sports and extracurricular types of programs. I would prefer that those programs were incorporated permanently and encouraged. Every time I've read any biographies or seen documentaries on successful individuals, many times they've played an instrument or a sport or like to paint or to draw. And I think that helps accelerate the self-image of the individual in a positive way. When they're sitting in a classroom all day, if they can go out and exercise their mind in another direction, that actually works with what they've been doing and helps it to work better. I think their thought process flows more evenly when they feel that they can move across the spectrum in different types of activities, not just academic, but physical, emotional, working together in teams, winning and losing, experiencing that kind of joy and triumph, or even the misery. If you go out there and you play dodgeball and you get out first, you have to deal with that. And I think that helps a student when they get back into the classroom, that then they're more physically cleared out.
Right, okay, that's a good point. Just to conclude on some of the previous questions, should we require a minimum number of Regents exams to be passed for graduation?
You mean on the Regents track? Or
I'm just saying, to graduate high school, should we require a minimum number of Regents exams to be passed by students?
No.
Okay, thanks.
I would say no. I think the quality over the quantity.
Thank you. Senator Bino.
I didn't have a question.
Good question. Then let me go to Assemblyman Otis.
Mr. Fernandez, thank you for coming in and putting yourself forward. You have an interesting resume, background, a lot of varied things. Most curious about this, I saw that you worked for the city of Yonkers for a number of years. Interested if you have a perception of the interaction between elected officials who are non-education folks and the education system. Yonkers is one of the few communities where, as a Big Five city, where the non-elected, non-education officials, the city council folks, have big say in education policy and funding, as opposed to most districts where they're totally separate. But did you, when you worked for the city or just living in Yonkers, have a perception of how that interaction works, doesn't work, anything that might help us understand your perspective on how education works as you've seen it?
Well, that seems to exemplify what I was sort of touching on earlier in my remarks. If you're asking me about the city council and the government not being strict academics in the sense of what you might find, in a hierarchy of individuals overseeing an educational system, we have a board of education in Yonkers, and they also are not all strict academics, which I find very positive in both cases, because you're reflecting the community and who's there. And I think interested individuals want to do the right thing, and they want to work in coordination with the right process and with the right individuals. And what you see happening there is a coordination of academics and non-academics working better together because there is a mix. I think they keep each other sort of justified within the operations. And that, to me, that's always made sense. When there have been shortfalls, I think it's more of a finance thing, and we need to see, like I'd said, how money's being spent. But as far as ideas and individuals, I think our schools have been doing pretty well. We've had some positive academic steps forward for our students. So I think that's in part because the community creates the mix, rather than fitting into just one strict mold of it must all be academics.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burrows, Assemblyman Burrows.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Mendez.
Steve.
I am just going to give you a little of my background. So I'm a former educator of regular education as well as special education students. And so
I have it here.
I transitioned from speaking about that to speaking about a campaign promise and a campaign process. As I go through a campaign, I have to think about my constituents, my base. What is it that I can say to galvanize my base, that they believe or they have hopes that I'm the person who can come and serve and fulfill their needs? And I think that's what this board is serving as. And so as we're listening for responses to questions, we want to be galvanized. We want to hear some things that we're saying, wow, this person understands change. This person understands the nuance of what the Regents Board is asked of them. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions, a series of questions. I just want to see if you can give me a response that wows myself, but as well as wows the rest of the board. Being a former educator, this is close to my heart, and so I would hope that the person who, the people that's, serving children have thought about initiating some ideas that could actually help them. So the questions that I'll ask, I just want to see if they're very concise, specific, and I think they're pretty basic. So, are you aware that the Regents, so someone asked about the Regents, the testing, and do you think the operations of it should be changed in terms of graduation? And you stated no. So I would like to know, you say no. I agree. But why is it that you say no? And then if you could try and make that question short. I don't need a long answer for that because I have others.
So why am I interested in not changing the requirement of having an exam for the Regents
For graduation,
for graduation?
yes.
Well, not having a number of classes, I think that was part of the conversation, but having it as a requirement itself. I think if you're on the Regents track, you can have a Regents diploma, so you need to take some Regents classes. Am I missing your question?
No, that's okay. So that was fine. So here's a question.
So then, I'm sorry. So were you saying then maybe there should be one unified diploma versus two separate diplomas?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just stating. I just wanted to hear your opinion, because there are those of us who say that the Regents track is, which was going to lead to my next question. So I'll just ask you the question now.
Okay.
So you spoke of knowledge and teaching. You don't want to just teach to the Regents to pass the test itself. You want individuals to know what they're reading, to understand, and to give a good response to it. So, knowing that, what opinion do you have on the Regents being spoken or said to have been racially biased? So a lot of educators have complained that the test itself is racially biased, the standardized test. Do you know it to be, in your opinion, biased?
Well, I've read a lot about that, and I do have an opinion on that. When it comes to the exams, not reaching out to the students in the way that they should, that goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, when it comes to these exams, it should be more on knowledge, and that should come from the classroom, not from the exam. We shouldn't be teaching on how to pass the exam, because then, yeah, in certain communities, there might be certain focuses and certain aspects of an exam that don't fit in with everybody else's experience. And I think that it would be more beneficial, like I said, quality over quantity. Everybody should be learning the same information in the same way. And it should be made, it should be presented in a way that each student can understand it. Now, if a standardized test, you know, the word is frightening because it's standard is part of it. So that sort of makes it a one-size-fits-all. And that's what I would hope to avoid. You can't have a one-size-fits-all. And as you're saying, there's different ways of reaching out to different types of students, but it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to achieve a Regents diploma.
Let me cut in at this particular point. I think we've exceeded our time for our interview, and I thank you for your patience, sir. I thank you for your answers and coming forth here today. We definitely appreciate it, and we will take all of that into consideration, and you'll be notified when we make this decision, which will happen within a couple weeks. So, Mr. Fernandez, thank you for coming today, and thank you for responding to us. Have a good day,
Thank you all
sir.
very much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope I answered the question.
Miss Annette Johnson is next. Mr. Boz Siegel, who is supposed to be number, two more, he has dropped out. Okay? It seems just as well because Mr. Siegel, from looking at his resume, lives in Manhattan, and he's supposed to, the Regents are supposed to live within the district that, yeah, so. Come right ahead, Ms. Siegel. Right here. Ms. Siegel, excuse me, Ms. Johnson, Annette Johnson. Okay, thank you very much for being here. My name is Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. I'm not going to introduce everybody up here. It'll just take too long. But suffice it to say, we're all senators, assembly people who have an interest in the Board of Regents and what is going on and who should be appointed to that. And so we're here today just to really to have a nice informal conversation with you. I want you to be relaxed and easy and don't worry about what, be intimidated by your surroundings. You have, what we want is you to tell us shortly, in about 3 minutes or so, who you are, why you want to be a Regents, why do you think you will be a good addition to the Regents, and so on. And then after you finish that, we'll ask you some questions. Some might ask questions, some might not. It depends, okay? But please, just relax and make sure the microphone in front of you, there should be a green light there, okay, which should be on. If it's not, just press the button and turn it on. No, yeah.
No, not that green light. This green light.
Right on the base of the microphone, okay?
Press the button and you'll see the green light.
Okay?
Now on, yes.
Cool.
Good morning, everyone. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today to talk about the Board of Regents and why I would like to be part of the Board of Regents. My interest in the position is based on my experience and knowledge of the value of education as a critical component and foundation for community, healthy community. In other words, looking at the role of all members of a community participating in supporting the growth of a community using education as a major touch point for all members, both formally and informally, to really provide opportunities for everyone within the community, but also to provide some parameters, I would say, within that particular community or within the whole community of education around what is needed and what's necessary. And I contend that it's a collaboration. It's got to be a collaboration between individuals within the community, within the education community, thinking about and determining what kinds of skills and what kinds of talents need to go into the field, but also how individuals can best contribute, understanding education is a critical component that must be recognized and must be tolerated. And I use the word tolerated, given some of the experiences that we're having now and some of the threats or the threats against education. How do we maintain education and information flow such that it is helpful rather than a divisive tool? I agree that the entire community needs to be involved, but there are some skills I think that are necessary. Number one, being able to communicate openly and honestly about what's happening and being able to reconcile at some point. Also, developing the skill of critical thinking as I've worked through various education realms going forward. One of the areas that I've always been very concerned about is the fact of being able to take information, use it from a critical point of view, make decisions, and move forward. And I know that that's not something that you can measure and parameters, but I think it's a critical point and it needs to be there. At the same time, they'll develop skills in specialized areas that are needed. And how do you really define the skills that are needed for a profession? And then how do you guarantee that over a period of time, the practice of it really is adhering to what those skills are? So there is a need for entities like the Regents to have that ability to look at what is happening and say, okay, this is what we understand based on the laws and also based on the science and research of what are critical components for specific disciplines, for education generally, but for specific disciplines, but also recognizing when it might be time to revisit those because of changes that take place in society. And I talk about nowadays, for example, how do you begin to deal with the impacts that we're still dealing with of COVID-19? Then, how do you begin to deal with issues like the increase in violence that's taking place in schools? What does that mean for what education means? How does that impact what's necessary and what's needed? And from a critical point of view, how does that factor into what I'm teaching in a way so it doesn't negatively impact the information that I'm trying to impart, but at the same time recognizes it? The other thing that comes to mind, of course, now, it has to do with my area of study. I did my dissertation and looking at how behavioral health and mental health services, the value of that and integrating that into schools. And I know that's a big area right now, but how do you do that? How do you have educators and people in that field come to a meeting of the mind so that's a meaningful piece that is incorporated not as an offside, but as an integral part of the education process itself? I think about the impact of these different challenges that we are facing in education, where you want to maintain the fidelity of what we call education at all levels, but also recognize that things are shifting, not only from a generational point of view, working with adolescents and young adults in education settings, how we emphasize with them some of these basics are necessary for everyday living.
Ms. Johnson, let me cut in here. I let you go past your 3 minutes that we give you because I found it quite interesting,
Okay.
your views, and I thank you for them. You mentioned the mental health of students, and certainly this is an issue here. You have opinions on cell phone bans and everything?
Trying to teach with cell phones going off left and right and people leaving the classroom, I think that there is, and I'm probably putting my foot in foot, there's a need for banning them in the classroom so that education, learning can take place. Communication is wonderful between students, but texting back and forth during class and talking to your friends is not necessarily the best way to go about the process. So as I said, I do have opinions about having experience of trying to talk over and bring folks back from using their cell phones.
Assemblywoman Hyman.
Thank you so much. Some things you said just made me think about, since COVID-19, there has been documented gaps, not just for the K-12, but we're talking about entire P through 16. We're talking about faculty, staff, and as a region, the region would have a lot of say in policy or guidelines about how the state should move forward. So I'd like to, if you can elaborate more on what you think the region should be doing addressing the COVID-19 pause, or gaps, I should say. Thank you.
Okay. I think that, and this is an old term, I think there's a need for some remedial education, and I look at it from the basis of students that I'm teaching at the college level, where I have encountered students and seniors that somehow have missed the basics in terms of writing, in terms of being able to read and understand and create. So it's like not so much a step back, but some kind of supplemental education that helps to fill in what some of those gaps are. And it's across the board. I'm working now also, I'm tutoring young students from Albany, from South End of Albany. There are definite gaps in what happened to them. We're trying to catch them up with reading so they make it at least to the 3rd grade. But it's very disheartening to have a student who's in the 6th grade who's reading at the 1st grade level. What do we do to close that gap? There's a need for some kind of supplemental training, and it's a money issue, I understand, but I think in the long run it's going to pay off because they're going to be much more valuable members of the community.
Thank you.
Senator Bino.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So aside from educational and emotional recovery that we need to address related to COVID-19 and our students, what do you think is the most impactful challenge that faces the region to which you seek to serve?
Challenge. I'm going to talk about the resources, both monetary and persons, that are available to really address some of the issues that came up with COVID-19. We basically trained a generation to be isolated themselves, interact with electronics but not with each other. And then on the other side, they've fallen behind 2-3 years in terms of where they might have been, and the frustration and the anger that comes up with students and also with people who are teaching them because of that gap. They're doing their best to try to bring them up, and the students are like, you're bothering me, you're frustrating me because I just don't have that skill. it's a resignation that I see sometimes on behalf of education staff, and a degree of resentment on the part of students because they feel as though they're being labeled in some way as less intelligent and dumb.
Thank you.
Assemblyman Smith.
Thank you. Good morning. You were speaking my language. I could have listened to you for another 10 minutes on your opening. When we're talking about mental health, so you have an expertise and you also work at the college level. Do you have any thoughts about the pipeline for mental health professionals and what we can do to improve?
One thing that I see is how do we make it, and I'll use this term, much more sexy so people will go into the discipline. What we're seeing is there's less and less students choosing to go into that field. They're more kind of concerned with the bottom line dollars, and they understand that there's a need for those services, but how can we actually motivate folks to go in and begin to study it, to take their turn with it, understand what an impact they'll have ultimately. I noticed that at many universities, that's one of the disciplines, is one of the departments that's suffering from low enrollment. And talking to students that I've had that have graduated, the kinds of activities that they're doing out in the community, at times they sort of think of it as a way to step up into another profession. How soon can I go through this and then come out the other side and do something else? Go back to school and train to do something else. So I think it's a way of making it much more attractive, and also...
Is that something that you would make a priority if you were on the Board of Regents with your expertise?
I think it would, given where we are now in terms of behavioral health and mental health. I think we have to. And from kindergarten all the way through, and also on behalf of people who are educating.
And the last question, and I apologize for cutting you, community schools model. I see it thriving here in the city of Albany and where you're local here. What can the Regents do to kind of improve or work with that model with localities, if that's...
I think that is, I think one of the way you define community schools, I'm not sure that's clearly understood.
True.
Across the board, what it's doing, and who needs to be involved in that. Reaching out so it's not just students themselves and educators, but how do you get, because it's a community school, how do you get the community involved and supported as well, too? And define the role for them. I mean, there's been several models out there about how you do that. How do you begin to look at those models and think about how that might be more closely defined in the community schools?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Assemblyman O'Farrell.
Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
Thank you for being here and speaking and touching on issues that affect our young people, particularly mental health issues. My question to you would be, given the ongoing struggles for racial and socioeconomic equity in education, how would you address these criticisms that has benefited marginalized communities?
Okay, one thing, I'll just give you an example. I teach in a department, or was on faculty in a department that was focused with Africana studies. And what's happened over a period of time is that there's less emphasis on the importance of departments like that. And because we're in an era where the whole thought of Black History Month, talking about those subjects in classrooms are considered taboo. Thought is, how do you take that information and integrate it into something that's taking place already? I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is looking at the issues of racism and racial discussions as a separate entity instead of as part of, and emphasizing that it's an important part of the history itself, articulating it. I still remember an opportunity when I was doing some historical overview and looking at periods, and I asked someone to define Civil War. they define civil rights. They say, well, it's civil rights, civil or, whatever. Not understanding the distinction between the two, giving them the actual knowledge that they need and understanding how it fits into their life. And I think it's definitely for students of color. They need to know that they have valuable things that have taken place in their life, but also for the larger community to understand there is a value in them being part of that larger community, not losing themselves. I'm not talking about assimilation. I'm talking about being able to coexist to a certain extent and honoring that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Ms. Johnson, I thank you very much for coming here today. I also want to just say I love how you kept your answers nice and concise, okay? You didn't run on, and it's just a great feeling, okay? We thank you for coming here today. We thank you for your interest in being a Regents, and we will certainly consider highly on your application. But we will let you know in a couple of weeks, because we will be deciding on this in a couple of weeks now. Thank you for your time, ma'am.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye-bye. The next person, Mr. Siegel, has withdrawn. So we'll go to the next person after that, Keith Wiley, and that is for the Western New York District, Erie and Allegheny counties and so on. Okay. I'm sorry? I thought so too.
Kelly.
Welcome him.
Welcome, Mr. Wiley.
Good morning.
Pleasure to have you. I'm State Senator Shelley Mayer, Chair of the Senate Education Committee. To my left, although he left for a second, is Mr. Benedetto, Assemblyman Benedetto, who's Chair of the Assembly Education Committee. We have Assemblywoman Alicia Hindman, Chair of the Higher Education Committee in the Assembly, and my other colleagues here from the Senate and Assembly. So how we've been handling this is you have 3 minutes for an opening statement. We want to hear about yourself in an informal way. And then all of the colleagues will have an opportunity to ask you questions and listen to your answers. But thank you for putting yourself forward. We have a copy of your resume, so that's helpful beginning, and your statement as well here.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Keith Wiley. I'm a middle school math teacher from Buffalo, New York. Go Bills. I'm honored and excited to interview for this position for New York State Regents, representing Western New York. My principal texted me last night and said, "You're built for this." The school board president was at church yesterday, and she said, "You'll do a good job." My kids texted me this morning, they're in North Carolina, and they said, "Dad, you got this." So let me make my case. After a successful career in investment banking as a financial analyst for Rand Capital Corp., a venture capital firm, and strategic investments, leveraged buyout firm, I became a secondary math teacher at Houghton Academy in 2000. And I'm still there 25 years later. In 2013, I was awarded Citizen of the Year by the Buffalo News, mainly because of our victory, Houghton Academy, in a middle school math tournament over City Honors, which is rated one of the best schools in the nation. It got local, national, international recognition. But I had to do more. I taught undergrad and graduate studies at Medaille University and the University of Buffalo, algebra and math methods courses for students who want to become math teachers. But I had more to do. For the past 8 years, I've been a board member of the Professional Standards and Practice Board for Teachers that considers critical issues in teaching and teaching education and we make recommendations to the Board of Regents, State Ed, and the Commission of Education. I'm currently the co-chair of the Higher Ed Subcommittee. Some of the issues I've worked on over the past few years have been teacher recruitment, teacher mentoring, annual teacher performance review, code of ethics, certification requirements, professional development, and moral character issues. But I still want to do more for the nearly 3 million students in 700 districts across New York State. I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much. I will start as a proud UB Law graduate and a frequent visitor to the Buffalo Public Schools. So question one is, I'm sure you're quite aware of the challenge of some of the math and ELA test results in our communities across New York, and particularly in communities of color. They have been the most recent test results were quite disappointing. You've obviously managed to be successful in turning that around in math in middle school. If you were in the regions, what are the lessons that you can bring to help the rest of the state sort of achieve what you've achieved?
Well, I think what has been my success has been I've gotten my students excited about learning. And I think you have to have classroom management. Math is difficult. The questions are difficult. We went to the new Gen standards, and as opposed to testing one standard, they tend to bundle 2 or 3 different standards. That's difficult for a student. The special needs children, which also take the test, and I don't want to say they pull the scores down, but they don't test as well, and it brings the whole group down. So I think there should be some, I know they get accommodations, but I think there should be some different type of testing for the various students. They can do it, but why make the questions so difficult? And this is me as a teacher. And my approach to getting my students ready, we dig in and I show them what the tricks are in the testing. And there are some tricks. And they try to make it simple for some, but it's difficult for others. And it's a reading component. And now we have E&L students. They can do the math, but the wording is difficult for them. So I think there's got to be some adjustment in the testing and some adjustments in the classroom.
That's very helpful to know, and I think we could share that. That would be very valuable. What are the tools for engaging and keeping the students excited, as you said, because that is a challenge in many of our urban school districts, including mine, unless you have an exceptional teacher. Exceptional teachers, yes. Teachers who are not exceptional, no. So I think for the state education department, we need to encourage that kind of exceptionalism and getting students excited. What are the tools you would encourage the state education department to adopt?
Well, I've taught math methods for teacher prep. I try to tell my students, you cannot be like me. There's only one me, but you can be you. And I think you have a real knowledge of mathematics, how it relates to the real world. I think you have to be entertaining and caring, but you have to have the discipline of we're going to work, not play. Last year, we were involved in a research project with Harvard. They came to my class 5 times to see how I teach inner city math. And one of the ideas they had, well, he said, this guy really has control of the classroom. I think you have to get control of the classroom. And also, I think you have to allow students to mingle. They can teach each other well. And you have to have that sort of group activity. It's fun, and you got to make it fun, too.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Miss Assemblywoman Hyman.
Good morning,
Good
and
morning.
thank you. Middle school is tough.
Middle school
I've
is
heard
tough.
all teachers say how challenging it is because of the hormones and the adjustments. So thank you. 25 years, I think that's a commendable achievement. You mentioned teacher recruitment, which is something that the current chancellor, Dr. Young, and the education department, and even in the legislature, we've been trying to tackle. How do we recruit teachers, particularly male teachers, Black and Latino, and so what advice or what would you say the region should be doing in order to make sure that we continue to, one, recruit teachers to the profession, especially male teachers, and what do you see some of the challenges to do that? Thank you.
Thank you. This is my second career. I'm old. I turned 69 last week, and I teach at 69. And all the kids wore T-shirts, 69 at 69. It was fun. But I think there's an opportunity for second career, folks like myself. There's a lot of people that are tired of corporate. I was a math whiz as a young kid. My mother was a teacher. I never wanted to be a teacher at all. I started helping kids when we had the Math A way back, and it was at school was trouble, and those kids started passing. And they said, well, do you want to teach? And I said, okay, yeah. But I think there's opportunities for folks like myself as a second career. I think there's programs where we had to get students excited in high school teaching. I have kids that will come up to the board and will lay out a lesson just like I would. I say, hey, do you want to teach? Oh, no, we don't want to deal with these kids. So I think there's opportunities, but I think we have to do it at a younger level. I think in college, you go and you have your graduate programs, and you spend a lot of money. And then when you get into the field as a resident, you get into the field and you find out you don't like kids. Or you become a teacher, and the first 3 years, you're like, oh, I don't like this. And you spend all this money. So I think there's got to be some kind of bridge that allows folks to interact with kids, whether it's at, like camp or something, or after school, and allow them to see if they really like teaching, because it's a wonderful, wonderful career.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator John Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Wiley.
Yes, sir.
For putting yourself forward and for your service as your long service as a teacher, even as a second career. So you teach, as you mentioned in your resume, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and calculus in middle school.
Well, not calculus in middle school, but let me just tell you about 7th grade.
Well, my question has to do with the Regents exams. Were your students, they were a little too young to take the Regents exams, right?
No, a lot of my students in 8th grade have taken the 9th grade Regents.
Got it. Okay.
I say not calculus, but I think one of the things people don't recognize about 7th grade, those students come from a 6th grade elementary. But in 7th grade, you get everything. You get algebra, geometry, stats, trig, and it's overwhelming.
What do you think of the Regents exams, the traditional algebra, geometry, and trigonometry Regents exams? Are they helpful, are they useful, or are they
in high
part of
school? In high school, I don't have a problem with. It's the state assessments 3 to 8. That's where I have a problem. And I also have a problem, and this is a personal issue of mine. The students don't get a real math teacher until 7th grade. And that's got to be addressed. They have teachers that teach math, but they don't have teachers that, like myself, have gone to school for mathematics.
Do you think the Regents exams are a helpful indicator of academic success, particularly with regard to mathematics?
For some, but again, my thought is for special needs students. I don't think it's fair for them. I think there should be another test for them.
What's your impression of what the Regents have done over these last many years in terms of reevaluating and redesigning graduation requirements, high school graduation requirements in New York State?
I think they're on the right path. Again, I told you I'm on the board of professional standards practice, and we've made recommendations on graduation requirements. I think they're going the right way. I think we were on a path when I first started teaching that graduation requirements, those tests for special needs were shifted a little bit to accommodate those students, but now everybody takes the same exam, and some kids never pass it, and you got a backlog in senior year that they don't graduate. And I think that's some trouble.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I want to acknowledge that we have been joined at the table by the state Senate Higher Education Chair, Senator Toby Stavitsky.
Good morning.
Welcome, Senator. Assemblyman Burrows.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mr. Wiley, I have a fun question. See if we can get a fun answer.
Okay.
Okay, so when things have been status quo throughout the years, tell me something that, or the board, something that you envision that you can bring to the board that is new, forthcoming, and something that's so eye-opening that will bring vibrant learning, it'll bring vibrant energy to the board as well as the students.
Last week, and I've been talking to my students about today, and I asked them, I said, hey, what would you guys like to see happen? What would make you excited? And this is fun. Because when I was a kid, I lived across the street from school. I couldn't wait to get to school. After school, weekends at school. These kids don't come to school. What would make you come to school? You know what their answer was? If we had nice desks and chairs. Those chairs and desks are uncomfortable, Mr. Wiley. I sat in one for some professional development this summer. I sat there and my back was hurting. My legs was hurting. I was ready to get up. And I think that was, so when you asked me that question, that's the first thing I thought about. If you make the atmosphere in schools conducive to learning, I think they would come. I think you would solve the absentee program. The pandemic put us in a way in that students think, well, I really don't have to come to school anymore. I can miss school. That's the problem we see right now. A lot of kids aren't coming to school. Thus, you have a problem with state scores, learning, that kind of thing. So I think one of the fun things would change the classroom. Make it conducive to learning. Make it comfortable. Make it exciting. I think these kids would come.
Okay, I have a quick question. So now your resume says Academy. Is that a public school?
Houghton Academy?
Yes.
Yeah, public school 69.
Okay. So how would you work with local school districts as well in Long Island, which is where I'm from, and represent? There are issues with charter schools and public schools. So how would you ensure fair funding for public schools as well as charter schools?
Charter schools, couple ideas I have on that. Charter schools are fine Charter schools have an advantage in that it's always like 3 or 4 students in the classroom that are cut-ups. Charter school get rid of those problems. They don't have to keep them. We do. We have to keep those 3 and 4 students in the class that infect the entire learning environment. I have no problem with charter school. My only problem with charter school, I don't have a problem with the funding. My only problem with charter school is being that I've been on the practices committee at PSPB, moral conduct issues. Those teachers that we have found that have moral conduct issues, whether it's students or personal problems, we can take their certification, but they can go to charter school and still teach. That's my only issue with charter schools. If you get the funding, have the same moral character codes that we have to abide by in public.
Are you aware of the issues with public schools and charter schools as far as funding?
Somewhat. I know they get a portion of our funding. But I'm saying that's okay. I don't mind that environment, but I do mind the moral conduct.
Let me cut in where must move ahead. Assemblyman Smith.
Thanks so much, and good morning.
Sir.
I loved what you had to say about it, it's exciting and inspiring young people, because I do think that's a big part of it. What would you say, because I'm imagining that you don't have the cell phone issue as much in your classroom, because I feel like you're so entertaining that people probably do pay close attention. Is that a true assessment? Or?
Well, I
Maybe not, maybe.
no, my friends tell me if I get a mic in front of me, look out. Here's what we do, okay? In my homeroom, in all homerooms, we take the phones. In my homeroom, I allow the students to have about 20 minutes of homeroom time to use their phones, 20 minutes at the end of the day. During the rest of the time, I have them locked up right behind me. You can see them. If you need your cell phone, say you need to go home, if you need to call your parents, because some of these kids don't know their parents' telephone number, it's on the phone. They can have them, but we don't have that issue. This is how we do it, and that's how it goes.
Okay, and how can we take your vibrant approach and clone it? I mean, we can't physically clone you, but how can you, as a member of the Board of Regents, or maybe professional development, what could you help implement to help create more outstanding teachers, or encourage and try to inspire that?
Well, that's why I'm here, because they've told me ever since I started teaching, they said, you got to get cloned, and you have to, you stand in the same school, same classroom. So I did branch out. I went to high school. I went to college. I'm over at PSBB across the street. Now I'm here. I can't give you the recipe, but I'm going to try my best to do what I can.
And then I like what you mentioned about the second career, because I think you're right. I mean, you're a perfect example, but I think there are a lot of people that would love to take a crack at teaching who might have a lot to offer, maybe in the fields of business or technology. So I hope that if you're on the Regents, that's something you could work on. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Assemblyman Otis.
Thank you, Mr. Wiley. I appreciate your enthusiasm for teaching and the Buffalo Bills, both very important.
Next year.
Sort of an extension of Mr. Smith's question, which is to have your teaching experience and then have you on the Board of Regents. Is there something that you think the Board of Regents needs to hear about teaching that you're going to bring that they maybe aren't hearing directly right now?
Well, one of the things we haven't mentioned is certification. And I think the certification involves a lot of different aspects. We have to make certification easier for folks that out of state that want to come. We have to make it easier for teacher assistants and teacher aides to come. it's a funny process we have. A science teacher has to have a certification in physics and chemistry to teach either one, as opposed to a math teacher can teach calculus and algebra and stats. Those little things, those certification things. And then you go through all different pathways and spending money and this and that and this test and that test. I think that can be streamlined, and you can get those excited folks that want to teach. I think we got to do with certification. The other thing is parent involvement. My mother was the first Black to integrate an all-white school in North Carolina in 1965. She died shortly thereafter in 1971. All-white school. Those kids and parents suffered like I did. There seems to be some gap now of teachers aren't looked and respected like those days. The teacher could say, hey, this is a cup. And the kid say, it's not a cup, it's a glass. And the parent comes in and say, well, it's a glass because he said it. It's some disconnect there. And we want parent involvement, but we need to have, and I think the pandemic, because I've watched this thing, the pandemic hurt us because the parents, it's like the teachers became the enemy and disrespected. And so folks are saying, no, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that. And I think those couple issues right there would.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wiley, I thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you, sir.
Patience waiting outside and for your answers here today. I believe we have exhausted the questions we're going to ask you, and I think everybody was quite impressed with you. So thank you for coming. We will notify you within the next couple weeks which way we're going to go with this.
Okay, all right.
Good luck,
Thank
sir.
you. You guys have a good day.
Thank you.
I have it, thanks.
You know, Mr. Frazier, we welcome you here today. Mr. Frazier is interviewing for Oso Judicial District Number 8. Okay. We welcome you. We thank you for your interest in applying for the Board of Regents. My name is Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. We have a panel up here consisting of Assembly people, senators, some are chairmen, some are members, but all interested in the quality of education in the state of New York. We want to hear from you. You have, unfortunately, about 3 minutes or so to tell us about yourself, and then we're going to ask you some questions, okay, that might be on our mind, okay? So make sure the little light in front of you is green.
It is.
Or lit up. Then, Mr. Frazier, you're on.
Good. My name is Bruce Frazier. I'm a retired superintendent from the city of Lockport. During the time I was there, we improved our Business First ranking, which is significant in Western New York, from 87 to 36, while dealing with the small city school challenging population. My interest in serving on the Board of Regents emerged as a result of a long overdue effort to update the foundation aid formula and improve school funding equity. My doctoral dissertation focused upon school funding equity. It was nationally honored and led to adjustments in how Virginia measured local fiscal capacity when allocating aid to counties. My expertise in school funding has already played a role in shaping how New York allocates funding to local schools. In 2001, on the heels of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity Constitutional Challenge, I served on the NYSCD AIR professional panel, which estimated the cost of providing New York students their constitutionally guaranteed sound basic education. More recently, I served as an expert witness in the successful Small City School District Constitutional Challenge to New York's school funding system. A second area I would bring valued expertise to the Board of Regents includes sharing insight on how actions taken by the board might differentially impact our state's diverse school districts. If you're familiar with my resume, it reflects success in almost every job title in public education, and that experience has been gained working in urban, suburban, and rural settings. Additionally, since retiring from Lockport, I have taken on several broader leadership challenges. In my most recent leadership position as interim director of the Erie County School Boards, the challenge was to identify training opportunities and strengthen regional advocacy efforts on behalf of districts as diverse as rural North Collins, affluent Williamsville, and the massive city Buffalo School District. Through my experience serving in that county-wide leadership role, I came to appreciate how seemingly diverse districts can actually have much in common. A second post-retirement leadership challenge I took on was serving 5 years as the executive director of the New York State Rural Schools Association. The RSA focused on one clear challenge under my leadership, pulling together geographically diverse school districts facing a very common crisis. Gap elimination adjustments had a devastating impact on the heavily state aid dependent districts that made up the Rural School Association's membership. Through that leadership role, I came to appreciate the challenge of maintaining organizational focus on a single priority. On 4 occasions since retiring, I drove into the parking lot of a new school district, sat for a moment, experienced a little bit of panic, and asked myself, why are you taking on the problems of a school district that has determined they needed to change leadership? I paused and asked myself, how can you expect to make a difference over a short period of time when you know less about the operation and people who make up this district than anyone? I would answer that question for myself in that moment of panic, and for you today by laying out 3 precepts which define me as a person and have guided my leadership. First, the most important things that leaders do, and this is especially true for policy leaders, is learn. Second, if they want to be credible, educational leaders should seldom, if ever, make statements like, I believe, I prefer, or based on my educational philosophy. Leaders, particularly policy leaders, should always preface their statements with, based upon the data I have reviewed. Finally, for anyone leading a public entity or serving the public in any role, you must always pursue optimality. Years ago, through a great conversation with an engineer friend, I came upon a simple but wonderfully clear working definition of optimality. It being that theoretical point when any change in inputs or process leads to poorer output, or as we say in education, lesser outcomes. We never arrive at optimality, but it should remain our goal. For every teacher in the classroom, it should be their goal. When we're aligning personnel resources for success in staff training decisions and in establishing budget priorities, it should always be what drives us. The Board of Regents makes policy and oversees such broad operations that it is impossible as a candidate to check every box. Given that fact, I commend our regents for their effective reliance upon committees. Few candidates for a regent position can arrive with expertise in K-12 education, a post-secondary education experience, operation of museums and libraries, and the licensing and oversight of a broad range of professions. Given the breadth of Regents' governance and the oversight responsibility, I submit myself to you as a candidate who brings wide experience, a long record of successful and ethical leadership, a deep familiarity with the entire region that makes up the 8th Judicial District. I have already advocated and worked on behalf of 98% of the school districts within that region.
Mr. Frazier, thank you very much.
I have one paragraph. May I finish, please? I also bring 5 years of experience working at Cornell, one of New York's world-class post-secondary institutions, and budgeting facility expertise that readily transfers from P-12 to post-secondary education. Perhaps it's important that I put myself in front of you as a candidate who is truly committed to lifelong learning and growth, data-driven, and focused upon optimal educational outcomes. And I thank you for the opportunity to be here today and speak with you concerning my interest in serving the students and residents of the 8th District and more broadly, students across this very diverse state. I'm sorry if I took too long.
We just want to ask you a couple of questions, and let me start off talking about the regions are certainly reflecting on the graduations of students here in the state of New York, and what makes a truly educated person to graduate from high school. They are changing some of the requirements. Any views on that?
I think as educational leaders, we have to maintain standards and strive to improve at all levels. And that includes we should be strengthening our AP and college entry courses. We should be providing strong instruction for the Regents level students. It has been a reach, and I was involved as a high school principal 2 places to make possible all students graduating, passing 5 Regents exams. That's a challenge. I think there are other indicators that could be used, but I would be concerned about 2 things. First, is it a step away from high standards? And second, you're still stuck with the federal accountability measures. And I can't imagine being a high school principal, given a biology Regents, and I have some kids in there who could care less. They don't even think they're going to pass, and I think it operationally could be very disruptive. I think it needs to be, for reasons like that, I think it really needs to be thought through. I endorse alternatives, but I would be opposed to anything that looks like watering down high standards.
Thank you. Senator Mayer.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Frazier. I'm quite familiar with the Lockport and, ironically, with the Wilson. My husband graduated from Roy Hart. I know these Niagara County schools. Your experience has largely been in small cities and rural. Given that this region includes the Buffalo Public Schools, what is your experience with a true urban school district the size of Buffalo?
I spent a year as the executive director of the Erie County School Boards Association. If you look at this whole region, 20% of the students come from the city of Buffalo, 62% from Erie County. But I'd like to help you believe that someone who could work on behalf of all those people would be a logical choice for this role. I worked in one project closely with the Buffalo City School Boards, and that was doing research and being able to knock out a fairly corrupt charter school application. I know that the board appreciated that. I talked to Sharon Beltman-Cottman just Saturday, but it is because of the diversion of funds and other things, it's a tough issue. I'm aware of urban education from the old SIR reviews
Yes,
done
yes.
in the Bronx quite a few years ago. They were eye-opening for me. I saw buildings that had almost constant turnover in leadership and teaching staff. It made me fully appreciate the challenges. And
Let me just, I only have a limited time. I want to ask you another question. I appreciate your attention to modifications of the foundation aid formula, which have been made. In fact, it was fully paid, thanks to a lot of people here. And now the governor has proposed some other changes. Are you familiar with the Rockefeller Institute's report and the changes the governor has proposed this year?
I spent 5 days in the summer preparing testimony, trying to get
Yeah.
it down to be very brief. I went to the hearing in Buffalo.
Yes.
And I was given 2 minutes. I barely got through my introduction, but my text is in, and I think it was given some weight. My views on the Rockefeller Institute recommendation is they did a great job in a short period of time. It is, if all of those things that they talk about or recommend or offer as things to be phased in, if you moved in those directions, I think you'd be making real progress. I just read it again the last several weeks, and I think that the full literature review has tremendous value.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblyman Smith.
Thank you. And actually, I was going to ask you just to gauge how plugged in you are if you had read the report, but you said you also prepared testimony for the Rockefeller report. So can I just drill down a little bit more on the graduation requirements? So because this is a debate that I have in my own district where people feel that by not requiring a minimum number of Regents exams to pass, that in and of itself is watering down standards. I think that you have a more expanded view. Can you explain that a little bit better? Do you think we should have one diploma, maybe go back to multiple diplomas with a local option? What are your thoughts?
I think every student who comes into our building should be challenged and provided the best quality education they can. I think the exit requirements are somewhat arbitrary, and I think they need some more flexibility. There are states across this nation that are outperforming New York State on standardized test scores that don't have those type of requirements for graduation. And again, I think any one standard is inappropriate. I'll give you an example. When I was a high school principal, we had a student enter as a transfer from California, and he had no global studies. As a senior, he came in, he only had a 6-week course in U.S. history and government. So he was very bright. He was probably going on to junior college, and we had to make him a 504 to help him to finish. And I think that kind of flexibility in individual cases should be available to administrators. But at the same time, we have to assure kids are getting the education they need to be successful, higher ed, and the work settings that they will be in, the more challenging technological work settings.
Thank you.
Thank you. We haven't heard from him today, but Senator Stravinsky, you have a question.
Thank you for making the long journey, so to speak. Oh, okay. Sorry. Thank you for making this long journey from Erie County. You touched on this a moment ago, but I was troubled by some of the reports that our students are lagging. Particularly, I think the NAEP, the National Association of Education Progress, and which is considered the gold standard of standardized testing, I believe. How would you remedy this situation well, what would you suggest to the regents if you're chosen as a remedy for this situation?
This is not graduate school, and we don't have to worry about plagiarizing. I think we could look at what other states are doing. When I looked at the results for Massachusetts, they have some similar situations demographically, a large urban center that predominates their test takers. They have the same type of professional communities we have, suburban areas. What strikes me is we staff our buildings better than they do on a per pupil basis based on the NEA data, the last data, and yet we're not seeing the results. Is that a fact that we're not at the building level really supervising, training teachers, upgrading teachers to get better results? Or is that the fact that our students are a bit more challenged than their population? But again, I always believe we should look at other states and compare data and determine where our practices are not measuring up. And that would, again, I tried to tell you I'm a data freak, a data geek, and I think, again, why would we act on our own and not attempt to learn from places that are doing better than we are at this time?
Thank you.
Senator Lieu.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Frazier, 25 years, teacher, assistant principal, principal, assistant superintendent, superintendent. Then you retired, and you deserved it.
Thank you.
Then you went back and did another 10 years after you retired as principal of a couple of schools, superintendent, a couple of districts, director. That was, I guess, you finished about 6 or 7 years ago. You haven't had enough?
I'm a confirmed educator, and I do believe in service, and I do believe I have more to offer.
And you want to take on this highly paid, purely volunteer position?
I want to work on behalf of the kids of this entire state.
Thank you.
Mr. Frazier, we want to thank you very much for presenting yourself here today before us. Thank you for waiting outside. Thank you for being here and answering our questions. And now, be patient, and within a couple of weeks, we're going to have a decision, okay? But let me assure you that you've impressed everybody here, I'm sure, at the panel, and we will take due consideration in your candidacy.
I deeply appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with you as a panel. Thank you for your interest in education.
Thank you, and travel safely back home.
Thank you.
Our next candidate is a Melanie Dummers, who is applying for one of the at-large positions. And I believe Ms. Dummers is before us now. Come, sit before us. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Ms. Dummers?
Dumers.
Dumers. I'm sorry. Okay. My name's Mike Benedetto. I'm chairman of the Assembly Education Committee. We have other chairpersons here, but all of them are senators and assembly people. All are interested in the education of the students, and that's why we're here interviewing you for this position. We ask that you present yourself for about 3 minutes, nice and short. Just get to the highlights of who you are and why you want to become a regent and how you can maybe affect change in the regents if you think they need change. And then we'll ask you a few questions, okay? And just kind of relax and let's just have a conversation, okay?
Thank you, sir.
It's up to you. Go right ahead.
Well, my name is Melanie Doomers, and I'm an Albany born and raised resident. I graduated from Albany Public Schools, Albany High School, and as well as the University at Albany, with a bachelor's degree in art history and psychology. And I am the parent of a special needs child who did begin with preschool CSE, and he was awarded a CDOS credential about 7 years ago. And I am definitely interested in, I want to say, the special education component of the Regents, because he did not take Regents at that time. You needed to take Regents exams in order to get a diploma. And when I did go to Albany High many moons ago, there was an option of a general diploma or a Regents diploma. And I know while things are ever changing, that there is not the, you don't need maybe the Regents now, per my coworker. They didn't need Regents classes for her boys to graduate. So there's a lot of different changes, I think, and it's interesting to know what, is behind the, I guess, rationale and what goes into it. But I would be excited to be a regent, to, study those, the data that really drives education policy. And I really am very honored to be here today. It's a great opportunity. And I wish that, many would just realize the value of education, especially our young people at a young age. As it's been said, I believe it was Horace Mann, that education is the great equalizer, the conditions of men, individuals. And I think that's where it starts. Education is really, does a lot to change situations. And there's a lot of, violence, as we know. A lot of students are caught up in gang situations. And I would like to be a part of just promoting education as fun, that students will learn and want to proceed, and really a ticket out of, situations that, maybe they had been born into, but, the sky is the limit when you have education, in my opinion. I was born in the inner city of Albany myself, and here I am today, and I'm proud that I got my degree.
And we're glad you're here today, and thank you for that. Listen, so you have an interest in special education. Let me tell you, there are inequities in the education system in New York State, but none more so than the funding that's given to special education, okay, throughout the state, and paying the teachers and whatnot. Do you have any views on that?
Well, I think in general, it seemed like special education was a one-size-fits-all. I mean, you have individuals that maybe have special circumstances. They might have been intellectually appropriate, but somehow, they could have had a situation where they were placed in the course, in the particular classroom, just because that, for lack of putting them somewhere else. And I really think that the children tend to be lost, especially after high school, because they're told, oh, you can get a GED. But I myself worked for St. Coleman's in the emotionally disturbed area and in the school, and we were controlling behavior more often than not. So there wasn't even a push to, they were told they had to take the Regents. They arrived, they didn't even know what to do. But So I think more dollars have to go into education, especially special ed, but individuals need to know, what's involved. Personally.
Senator Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your advocacy on behalf of this community. We all care about them. They changed the rules about the CEDOS diploma, I think, after your son graduated, and now, again, they are changing to create multiple pathways for students with a wide range of abilities to graduate without having to take the Regents and without having the limitations of that diploma. Did you find that having that diploma limited your son's opportunities post-high school graduation?
Yes, most definitely. Because he technically cannot check that he has a high school diploma, although when he walked across that stage, he was very happy, and he was one of the students that was in school every day. He enjoyed going to school, and he has Asperger's, so he is high functioning, but unfortunately, without that diploma, you're seen as not completing the basic level, but he did complete what he needed to, and I'm not sure how that would go in the future if he would. It's kind of stuck in the middle right now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we couldn't change it retroactively, but, credit for the change in limiting it going forward, because it did really limit opportunities for young people. During the time that your son was in school, did they have a SEPTA chapter of the PTA? Were you involved in the special ed advocacy at all, or not particularly?
No, I don't recall.
Okay.
It was Ravina Queeman Selkirk. I don't recall.
And your work is at DOCS all
Correct.
these years. You're still there, or have you left?
No, I'm still at DOCS.
Oh, okay. And are you in the commissioner's office, or?
I actually was, I worked for deputy commissioner. Right now I'm in contracts. I've moved over from, this was my professional position. I held administrative assistant position with the deputy commissioner.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Assemblyman Smith.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for joining us today. Listening to your testimony regarding the CDAS credential that your child received, I agree with you because we've heard from parents that the state of New York did a real disservice to students at that time. With that lived experience and knowing that the Board of Regents took time to get to the point where they then established where a superintendent could sign off on a local diploma option. Are you following the Blue Ribbon panel and discussion about how we're talking about going forward for graduation? Or maybe I could fill you in a little bit
Yes.
on granting one high school diploma for New York. It would be a New York State diploma is what they're envisioning. There would be a Regents pathway for that and also a local pathway and perhaps some other pathways. Is that something that you think could be more inclusive for families and for students? Or what do you think that could entail that could be helpful?
Well, I know when I went to school, as I was saying, the local diploma, I think that a lot of the special education students should always be given the option. I mean, typically when you're in the classes, the mainstream class, you are, but then when you're moved to a smaller room, you're not. You're basically, as I said, and I personally worked. I think that would be a good idea, but I think always possibly allow for modifications. For example, when you take tests, you do have sometimes reasonable accommodations for individuals with disabilities, and I feel like that's a lot of just finding the students' strengths and really.
So you're talking about different ways to assess students to make sure, do they know the content? Because maybe they can show it to you or show it to a teacher in a different way. So
Yes.
that makes sense. So thank you, and thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing your thoughts.
Yes, thank you.
Question. The governor has made a big thing about cell phones and making a policy on cell phones. Do you have any guidance on that? Any ideas on it?
It's definitely a hot topic, and
Don't be afraid to take on the hot topics.
Okay. Well, I feel like, unfortunately, again, with all the violence in the schools, I feel like that cell phone is a lifeline, or can be to students, but, also the distraction of the phone, if you're texting, you're clearly not learning. I kind of would say possibly let them have them in the lockers in between breaks like you would, any other, lunchtime, to not interfere with, learning. But I wouldn't say to, bar them, so to speak, from the school, because it is important. And some children do have, medical needs, things of that nature that they definitely want to tell mom and dad before they arrive, with the nurse, or raise their hand to go traveling. So not easy, no easy decision, but.
Ms. Dumas, I thank you very much for your answer. I thank you very much for coming here today and the time you're applying for a position that we hold as extremely important, and you have put yourself forward, and we appreciate that. We appreciate your wait outside, your answers to your questions today, and we wish you well. Thank you very much for coming in, and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks what the decision will be. In the meantime, be well.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate all of you, and thank you for the service you do every day.
Thank you.
Bye now.
I don't know. We're a little early, so. I'm sorry? Oh, the person stepping down, I don't know.
Stepping down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Catherine
Okay.
Collins, Catherine Collins.
Ah.
Morning, still morning. No, afternoon.
Good afternoon, Regent Tillis. How are you, sir? We thank you for being here today.
There's some other members coming.
There may be more people on their way. We will start, and we probably will be joined by many more as we go on. Regent Tillis, we thank you. We certainly know of your service to the state, but take some time, tell us about yourself, and then we'll ask you some questions following that.
Good, thank you.
Regent Tillis, the floor is yours.
Push the button, Regent.
Regent, yeah.
It's on, I think. Because I've been here 4 times before, I'm not going to try to spend a lot of time on my past posts, what I've done on Long Island, and what I did in Michigan. I think most of you know I was on the similar board, the State Board of Education in Michigan, many years ago. I lobbied in Washington on education things. I worked for the Michigan State Department of Education as Director of Law and Legislation. I taught education law at the University of Michigan. I have been chair of LIU. I started Project Understanding with my friend Father Tom Hartman, which is ongoing in its 38th year now. We're taking Catholic and Jewish kids to Israel and doing projects on Long Island. I founded the Association for Better Long Island. I was on the executive board of the Long Island Association, Long Island Philharmonic. I started a group called the Long Island Arts Alliance about 5 years ago, and it's on a very strong group right now. But what I wanted to talk about is just when I learned to make a difference in my life. I grew up in Great Neck, and I had every advantage in the world. I had great parents, all kinds of resources, great school district, parental involvement in the district. At the same time, my father, through luck, my grandfather had bought a little piece of land in Island Trees, Long Island. And in 1927, he saved $1,000. He was a sweatshop guy, and he owned, fortunately, he got enough money to buy a little candy store. And so in 1927, he bought this little piece of land and put the deed in the safe deposit box. 1950, my grandfather died, and my father gets a call from a guy that says, I see you have a piece of land in Island Trees. I'd like to buy it for $10,000. And my father said, I don't know what you're talking about. He had no idea that we had the piece of land. He looked, and there it was in the safe deposit box. He said, what do you want the land for? He said, well, I'm going to build some houses on Long Island for returning GIs. And my father said, well, if you're going to build houses, I'm going to build shopping for the houses. And he held on to the land and built, at that point, the largest shopping center on Long Island, which was in Levittown. It was Bill Levitt who was calling him. We've been very, very lucky. But what I didn't know, and we didn't know at the time, there were restrictive covenants in Levittown, the place that my father made his initial investment and made a lot of money, that allowed me to be in Great Neck. And we didn't know that the returning GIs couldn't get the GI Bill if they happened not to be white. And they were restricted out of Levittown. I learned later on in life, I became the chair of the Regional Planning Board of Long Island before I became a regent. And I learned that so much of the zoning on Long Island was done with malice aforethought. There's no question that we have pockets of poverty in the middle of some of the wealthiest areas on Long Island, whether it's Garden City and Hempstead or Wyandanch and Half Hollow Hills. And when the Regents came to Long Island 18 years ago, I brought them, and we traveled the road between the haves and the have-nots. And when I became chair of the Regional Planning Board, it became so clear that the reasons that these pockets existed were not for the best reasons in the world. They were meant to keep people out or to have people in. Did I feel guilty about this? And Yeah, to some degree I did, but not really. But I resolved at that point to do whatever I could to try to ameliorate the problem. And when I became a regent, it became so clear that the zonings and the haves and the have-nots were done with, and the repercussions of that were so broad that that's where the resources were, and that the districts in the pockets of poverty didn't have anywhere near the resources of those that were in places that I grew up. And as a regent, 20 years ago, I learned that we had twofold mission that was excellence and equity. And Long Island schools have enough of both. We have needs for both. We have some of the very best school districts in the country on Long Island, and we have 125 school districts. I've been to most of them, and I have learned a tremendous amount over 20 years as a regent. But the one thing I did learn is that until many of the superintendents who are bragging about their districts, and they did very well, and again, there's some great, great districts on Long Island. But until we make sure that all the kids on Long Island are getting the access that they need to the resources, to the education resources that some have, we're not really doing our job until all the kids succeed. All means all. And so I've taken that as a watchword, but it's been a road that I've had to travel, and I'm sure that many of you have to travel, that ensures both excellence for our schools and equity for all the kids. And that's been my foremost question. And let me try to address an elephant in the room. I was the biggest proponent of DEI on Long Island. I'll say that right out loud. I think that it was important for our schools, it's important for our colleges to have equity and diversity and inclusion, but we call it now EOA, equity, opportunity, and access, and that's what we try to do. And the issue of regionalization, I would be the first one to admit, I was a strong proponent of it because I've seen so many districts on Long Island who have shared their resources with each other. If they don't have an AP course in one district and the other district does, they move, and it's happened all over. We have sports teams on Long Island that are from one high school with another high school. When I had kids in Great Neck, and we had a program called the Village School for special needs kids, and it was open for 5 districts. So I never thought there was any question that regionalization was something that could benefit a district. But they're obviously from whether it was the North Shore Leader or whatever they call that newspaper, or others, that it got misinterpreted. And the word regionalization probably was not the best word that we could have used for collaboration, but nevertheless, 80% of our school districts, 80% across the state, have signed on, have opted in, because it means a lot to be able to share and to create a plan, and that's what that regionalization is about. I have been a big proponent, as many of you know, for the arts. That's been one of my main tags. Right now, we had a call with all those teachers that teach English as a second language. Last week, I brought the commissioner and myself onto a line with maybe 300 teachers talking about how they should deal with the fact that ICE might try to get into their school. And I volunteered to be on the lines when that happens, so we'll see what happens.
Regent Tillis, thank you very much. I gave you a little extra time because I know we started
thank
a
you
little
very
early, so I figured it would make the gap. And you filled that gap, sir. Okay, and I thank you for it. I turn to my colleagues to ask a couple of questions. We'll start with Ms. Heidman.
Good morning, Regent Tillis. You have effectively been on the Regent for 20 years, and you made some, I'm sure there are certain things you would highlight and certain things you wish the Regent would do better, but particularly because of the area that you represent, and you use the terms excellence and equity, what do you think you've done to lift, particularly like the Hempstead School District and some of the other districts that are not as high performing as neighboring neighborhoods, number one. And then number two is, you have the opportunity now to be reappointed, and why should this body reappoint you?
Thank you. I have spent more time in Hempstead and Wyandanch versus all of the other districts combined on Long Island. It's been as frustrating for me as it is for many others. I learned that if you poured money into these districts, just some of the districts, it would not necessarily have been spent the way for maximum effect. At the same time, I've called for a monitor in Hempstead and Wyandanch, and that's been a very, I think, very helpful. But there still are tremendous problems. One of the reasons we are adopting Portrait of a Graduate, which is the new graduation requirements that will hopefully be in effect sometime soon, but we're adopting them, is because we were deliberately, because kids had to pass 5 Regents tests, I found out, I think Senator Mayer was with me in one of those, we talked to hundreds of parents of special ed students. And that started the ball rolling on Long Island, and it did across the state. We found out that kids, special ed kids, who couldn't pass one of the Regents tests, we were denying them graduation. And it was basically they couldn't get a job, they couldn't go to college, and they couldn't go into the Army even. And yet they were passing their courses. Some of them were passing them with honors. But they couldn't pass one of the Regents tests. So we created, and I had to really lock horns with my commissioner at that point, Commissioner Elia, to say we need a waiver for if the superintendent and the principal and the teachers say this kid knows the stuff in that course, that we're going to allow them to forget one of the Regents tests. Well, it then occurred to me, and I brought in a lot of people on Long Island and around the state, that what about the kid who's not a special ed kid? If they couldn't pass one of the Regents tests. I said, what do we want these Regents tests to do? And we had 38 different forums around the state that said, what do we want our kids to know when they graduate high school? And it had very little to do with what was on the Regents tests. And that started the ball rolling 6 years ago. We now have a report from the Blue Ribbon Commission. They want critical thinking, problem solving, financial literacy, information literacy, more art and music, and, and testing in a different way than the bubble tests were. And that's what people wanted. And we had a broad spectrum of people, employers, parents, students, teachers, you name it. And it was pretty unanimous. And so that's what our Portrait of a Graduate is going to do. And it's going to make sure that kids don't slip through the cracks because they couldn't pass one of the Regents tests. We're now eliminating we probably will still have Regents tests, but they won't be used in a harmful way unless the kid wants to use them. And that's one of the things that I'm doing to make sure that there's some equity in the system.
Regent Tillis, thank you very much for your answer. I just want to recognize the fact that we've been joined by several Assembly people who have joined us here today. Assemblyman Charles Levine, Assemblywoman Rebecca Kersey, and Assemblywoman Michaela Salages. Senator Bino.
Good afternoon, Regents Tillis.
Hi, Sheila.
Sheila Bino, and I'm hailing from Nassau County, former school board member. We may have met once or twice. You talked about equity, and so I want to talk a little bit about charter schools and the saturation of them in Senate District 6, specifically about the saturation and the proliferation that's occurred in the recent years. Hempstead, Westbury, Freeport, Roosevelt, Baldwin, Uniondale, they're sending upwards of about $140 million to charter schools. We talk about equity, but yet I see no balance in the regents working towards making sure that communities that are suffering from this oversaturation, where now there's a disparate impact to the public school students, educators, and community. And so I want to know and hear from you specifically, what have you done to address that in your role as a regent?
I have brought up, I would say, at every single meeting for the last 7 or 8 years, the question of, I don't want to get into whether charter schools are good or bad. Some of them are good, some of them are not very good. But the way we fund our charter schools creates an impossible situation, not necessarily so much in the cities, as it does for places like Long Island, Westchester, other places, where the budget of one school district, and I'll say Hempstead is a good example. Hempstead is getting $6 million more in state aid under the governor's budget, but they will lose $20 million in funding.
I'm sorry, I'm going to just interrupt for 1 second. Hempstead specifically is sending about $140 million to charter schools, and they receive $236 million in aid.
Right.
So their transitional money you might be referring to might be the $6 million, but I specifically want to hear from you about what you specifically did when you realized there was a saturation. What actionable steps did you take to try and mitigate that and in any way address it?
Yeah, I meet with the Hempstead monitor almost every week, Bill Johnson. And we met Friday, as a matter of fact, and he gave me the facts and figures, and that's what I have in front of me. But, and it's right now, it has reached an intolerable situation. In Hempstead, especially, there are other school districts that are affected, Freeport and Baldwin and others. But Hempstead is well over $100 million. And to take that out of the budget of the school district at this point will mean that they have to take huge cuts in their, for the regular students of Hempstead, and they're the ones least capable of absorbing those cuts. I have suggested to the regents and to the staff of the State Education Department, unless we change the way we fund our charter schools, we can't continue on this way. And there are other problems with charter schools that I've identified, that we have identified, having to do with the way we look at the parameters for approving a charter school, for renewing a charter school, that are different than the patterns for the way SUNY does that. And we are at a loss at this point. We know we're in a battle, but it seems to me that we're fairly strict on how we
Thank you,
approve.
Regents. I just want to leave you with this one point. The average graduation rate amongst those schools that I just discussed is 86.34. Hempstead currently has a graduation rate of 87%. All will be lost, and the perpetuation of disparities will present themselves even in wider gaps if we don't get a hold on how we're funding the charter schools, and we need action on that issue.
Thank you, Senator.
Absolutely correct.
Let us move on to Assemblyman Charles Levine.
Yes, I can.
You and you and I are friends. No secret there. But you have served as Director of Law and Legislation for the Michigan Department of Education. You were elected to the Michigan State Board of Education. You became the Executive Secretary to the Speaker of the Michigan House of Representatives. You taught education and law at the universities of Michigan, Michigan State, Eastern Michigan, and Central Michigan University's School of Education. You were also counsel to the Michigan Teacher Tenure Commission and a special education hearing officer. You are also the director of the Tillis Center, and the Tillis Center provides valuable lessons in theater and drama and heart to students throughout Long Island, many of those students who would never, ever be exposed to that experience. You are also chair and founding member of the Association for a Better Long Island, past acting chair of the Long Island Regional Planning Board, and you served as chair of the Long Island University Board of Trustees. You served on the boards of WNET, Channel 13, and WLIW, Channel 21, and you've been the executive vice chairman of the Tillis Center for the Performing Arts. You established the Long Island Arts Alliance, which also reaches out to all of our children without the slightest regard to what their zip codes are or how much their parents earn. You're also involved with significant interfaith activities, two of the most prominent being Project Understanding, which you started with the great late Monsignor Tom Hartman in 1987, bringing Catholic and Jewish teenagers together annually on a mission to Israel. And you were the producer of the first Vatican commemoration of the Holocaust under the auspices of Pope John II in Rome in 1994. You have also been the president of Temple Beth El of Great Neck. And in that capacity, you brought one of my heroes, our late great friend, Congressman John Lewis, to speak to Long Islanders at least twice. And you remember the National Young Leadership Cabinet of the UJA. So I want to say that I know of no one who is better prepared to serve the people of the state of New York, especially at a time when we are going to face national challenges to public education. Public education is part of your heart and soul. And I simply want to say, in the words that our old friend John Lewis used to like to use, keep the faith, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Assemblyman. Okay. Two more, we've been joined with two more members of the Assembly, Assemblywoman Judy Griffin and newly elected Assemblyman Tom Schiavone. So thank you for being here. Let us go to the Senator Toby Stavisky.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. You alluded to DEI and some of those programs that are in jeopardy, whether it be the demolishing the U.S. Department of Education's. I chair higher ed, and there was a story in the Times, I think yesterday, about how they're going to cut research programs, and this is going to affect our colleges and universities. How do you think the regions can respond to these threats to education, whether it be from 3K to postgraduate?
Well, I got my first death threat when we passed DEI in the first place. And I came back and basically said, we're going to double down on DEI. I know there's some problems with some people with DEI and some legitimate problems, but the way we have structured DEI to make sure that there is equity and diversity on our college campuses and in our schools, we're very insistent that we're going to push back on that where we can. We don't know what the ramifications of the federal budget are going to be and what crazy things we have to teach all of our kids that there's going to be more than 50 states. There'll be 51 states, but we're not going to. That's not part of DEI. But we're worried, very worried. I just left a meeting that we're discussing state aid across the street, and there are a lot of questions about the governor's budget, but then we overlay the potential cuts from the federal budget and affecting not just the department, but school districts, Title I, and special ed. These are pivotal programs for our school districts. I don't know what will happen. I don't know what we're going to come back to the state if we have to say, what are we going to do? How are we going to make this up? It's a problem.
Thank you. Assemblyman O'Farrell.
Yes, good afternoon, Regent Till. It was an honor to have you here. Thank you for your service. I do have two questions for you, one of which is, how would you respond to the new federal administration's efforts to eviscerate Department of Education, and what alternatives and framework or ideas do you have to replace that? That's question number one. Question number two is, what is your response to those who argue that measures for inclusivity may be diluting the academic process and standards?
As I said, I think the regions and the state education department will be as strong as ever on DEI and ready to perhaps even go to court if we need to continue the efforts that we've made on DEI. And in terms of what the government is going to do, the federal government is going to do with the Department of Education, I think some of the fears of what they can do in terms of the structure of the Department of Education maybe not as worrisome as the fact that they have the budget control and they can just, keep Title I and then just not fund it. And it seems to not bother anybody there, but it bothers a lot of us, and we will take whatever legal action we want want, we can, and also ask the legislature to take legal action and the governor to make sure that these cuts are not going to happen. I can't believe that they will be cutting things out, for instance, in special education, which affects such a broad community. And I know, basically on my Michigan days, we just established the special ed law in Michigan, the same one that the federal government has adopted, and the interest groups, frankly, are so strong in those areas. It's hard to believe that they will try to eviscerate those, but you never know what these people are going to do. And
Can I just ask you just real quick? I understand and I hear that, and I appreciate that we would take them to court and all that stuff. What are we going to do in the interim? Because I honestly believe the federal government is going to act on that.
We will take whatever legal steps we can, and we've already talked to our counsel this morning about making sure that both our department and school districts are legally covered to try to block it. That right now, that's what we're going to do.
But we don't have anything, like, you have any options, any ideas, any framework on how we can, aside from the lawsuits, what can we do in the interim?
No, at this point, we don't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mayor.
Thank you, Regent Tillis. Nice to see you. With respect to the monitors in Hempstead and Wyandanch, are you satisfied that with their work, we're seeing tangible improvement?
There's no question. The monitor in Hempstead is one of the giants of Bill Johnson of making sure that school district, and without Bill Johnson there, it's been chaotic enough with him there, but it would be devastating to lose that. I know the governor has not funded.
Yes, she did not fund it.
If the legislature doesn't come back and fund the school district, it's a reimbursement to school districts to fund those monitors. And Wyandanch has made some big improvements in terms of with their monitor that we've had. That's a financial monitor. And we were recommending in Hempstead that they add a second monitor.
Yes.
To not just have financial, but also educational program monitor. So, we think that they've been absolutely essential. I can't tell you as much about the Ramapo one.
Yes, I understand. Is there any other district in Long Island that you would, based on your representation, recommend that a monitor be appointed?
No.
Okay.
And the problem is with the charter schools, in the areas that both Wyandanch and Hempstead, Wyandanch, much smaller district, and if they're going to run into the same kind of proportional problems as Hempstead has, I don't know what a district's going to do. They can't declare bankruptcy. The only thing they can do is take it out of the programs for the majority of the kids. And
Yes.
that's unacceptable.
Well, we have legislation that would change that, if we could pass it. With respect to making art and music necessary and mandatory parts in the elementary grades, they're currently not required, except at a very minuscule level. School districts have basically taken the position, yes, we favor it, but you have to give us extra money for it. What is your position on how we can make art and music more universal? And
We just met this morning, our cultural ed division presented to us all of the different aspects that are available and are being done in schools, best practices of how to incorporate cultural events, cultural activities, whether it's a museum or library or art and music, into the curriculum. They showed kids through elementary school talking about a specific bird that was seen on the site of the school, and they were so excited, but they're drawing pictures of it, and they're singing songs about it. You can incorporate art into virtually every subject. And the issue 10 years ago was whether we have STEM, and we all were pushing STEM, but we said at that point we have to have STEAM. You've got to put the arts into S-T-A-E-A. Not a good
But
spelling.
not to cut you off, it currently still is not mandatory in,
It's not mandatory. It should be a core subject. There's no question in
Okay.
my mind that it should be a core subject, and that legislation is in front of the legislature. And it will not require any more, it's not what I would call a mandate, a curricular mandate, because we want, and the regents will be incorporating the arts into every subject.
Thank you. Ranka Smith.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Regent Tillis. I've always appreciated your philosophy of education and trying to help every student and support the programs that encourage kids to actually go to school, as you're mentioning just before. Your tenure on the board, which I don't know if you're the longest tenured member now for 20 years.
By far.
But your tenure while you were on the board from 2005 to 2015, I would mark that as a direction where, and you were critical of a lot of these decisions, where the state was moving in the wrong direction. Where, you know, in my opinion and the opinion of others, we were moving toward privatizing public education, concerns about assessment, concerns about Common Core, the teacher evaluations, all of these things. And in the last 10 years from 2015 to 2025, where we sit today, I think we've been moving in kind of the right direction or a better direction, portrait of a graduate. Can you give us some insight as to some of the changes that have gone on in these conversations? Because again, for what you could share with us, because I, you know, personally speaking just for myself, I like Betty Rose's vision much better than John King's vision. That's speaking just for myself.
It's interesting, having served on the Michigan board and then this board, the issues that we're dealing with are the same issues today as I dealt with 40 years ago. And whether we're moving in the right direction is the way to look at it, I think. But the way we have structured things, whether it's teacher evaluations especially, which was a totally misguided subject, and I got punished by certain members, or governors, that because I said this is going to be the worst problem for teacher morale. How could you grade teachers on the basis of student test scores? And it proved to be exactly that. And I said it's a very dangerous plan. Well, gladly it was reversed, and I think you said we're trying to move in the right direction. Portrait of a Graduate, I wish we could do that tomorrow, but it's very much like a steamship trying to turn in the ocean. It just doesn't go as fast as you want it to go. I don't think it should take 5 years, which is what we've said. I think it should take maybe 3 years or less. But because there's a lot of work that has to be done, we've got to not just incorporate things like the art and music into our curriculum, but we also have to train our teachers differently. We have to go to the education schools if we want our teachers. I'll give you a good example. It's been suggested, and I think maybe the right way, that in science, where we had 3 regions, you had biology, you had earth science, and you had chemistry, that what we want our kids to know when they graduate high school is how to ask AI the right questions. We don't know what 5 years from now is going to bring in terms of the world, but we know it's not going to be what's there today. And I think we want to teach kids to be critically able to deal with the world, and the world will be AI. And all the facts and information will be in AI. They don't need to learn, X, Y, Z. They need to learn how to ask AI a very specific questions. And that's one of the areas. It's going to take us a little time to move the needle
Thank you, I appreciate your answers.
Thank you, Regent. Assemblywoman Rebecca Cassay.
Hello, it's good to meet you. So I'm representing the 4th District in Suffolk County, and many of my districts are experiencing declining enrollment, but some of them are actually experiencing flat enrollment or even increasing enrollment. And I'm going to pick your brain as the past acting chair of the Long Island Regional Planning Board. We've had a lot of conversations with the districts about how the IDA and pilots are actually affecting the districts as far as offsetting the cost. It's great to be addressing the housing issues, but disproportionately, we have a lot of denser housing projects, developments going into these districts where there's already a sustaining population or now increasing population of students. They're already struggling in the districts to not cut programs, but really fund the students that they have. And with the pilots, they're not able to increase the funding proportionately. Yes, there's a per student in the foundation formula, in the aid formula, but it's like half of what it really costs to take on extra students on average. So what is it that you've done and or are willing to do to address this problem of pilots and IDAs to further housing goals, but also make sure that those incoming and existing students get the schooling?
We're very clear, and I've been very clear. Long Island has is the greatest amount of migrant population virtually in the state. The fact that we're losing population on many of the districts doesn't make up for the fact that we now have to spend twice as much money on teaching kids English, we have more special ed kids per capita than any place in the state. Perhaps we have more special ed attorneys, and that could be one of the reasons, but I think it's which came first, the chicken or the egg. But the populations require much more money, as you said, than the loss of population would indicate. So just keeping even hold harmless is difficult for districts that are experiencing a real change.
Sure, I appreciate. I'm just wondering, as our regent, how can we rely on you to advocate for, with the IDA boards and others to be sure that this problem is being addressed? It sounds like you understand, and it's not just students for whom English is not their first language. It's just the everyday student. If an area is more affordable, young families are going to be moving into that area, into that district, and so it's students of all kinds. So how can we, what can we expect there?
That's a different hat that I had on as the Regional Planning Board Director. The regions haven't really communicated with IDAs in terms of housing problems and cost of living, et cetera. I think the governor has recognized that there is a problem with the way cost of living was judged in the state aid formula. So that's where we get involved, and we said that we need an update, and she's gone some of the way in terms of doing that, but not as far as we would like to see a fair representation of what the new population is like.
Regent Tillis, thank you. Assemblyman Burrows.
Good morning, Mr. Tillis.
Morning.
I am a former teacher of the village of in Hempstead School District. So 21 years in that district I've seen, and I'm well aware of the things that go on there. And so I have some questions as someone who knows the ins and outs of what goes on in that district. You did mention some things which highlights that you understand the issues that revolve around that district, but I think I don't want to ask the question of what are you willing to do. I think you know what the issues are with charter schools. You know what the issues is with the monitor. Adding a second monitor, I'm not sure how that would be beneficial, as the current monitor, I think, could be doing more, in my opinion. If that person is someone who should be a watchdog, is someone who should do things for the betterment of that district. Some of the things, that's suggestions that I make. One of the first things you need to do is you want more involvement from the community. One of the reasons why the community is not as involved is because they don't believe anything that happens within that school district from the board perspective is done fair and with transparency. And so, you have things where voting is an issue. So are there any school board election possibility ideas that you may have where elections can be ran with, you feel like the clerk's office is being free and clear and allowing for fair voting process to take place? That's one question, as well as you understand about the non-regulations that the charter schools have. What's the idea for that? Also, the students that do enter the charter schools but they don't finish the school year there's no reimbursement to the school districts. That's unfair. And I think it's something that you see wrong. It's clear what's going on, and it seems to be intentional on some individuals' perspective or side. So these are the things that I think about. And this is what my campaign pledge was, is to fight for justice throughout that school district and other districts that serve, that have that issue. And so the funding formula for state aid, you spoke on that, which is great, but I'd just like to hear some of the things you may have respond to what I said, but also understanding this, that what happens in this district, in the 18th Assembly, it's a civil rights issue. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, because it's only allowed to happen in school of minority students.
Well, one of the problems at Hempstead that doesn't occur in any other district that I know of, they have no busing at all in Hempstead. Kids have to walk 3 miles, some of them, to school every day, and back and forth.
There's currently 4 buses, I want to correct, sorry. It's currently for the...
Let the man answer.
They just got them.
Yeah, but it's a long way. We know that, and that's one reason why kids don't come to school sometimes. The other in Hempstead, which has completely shifted demographic in the 20 years that I've been there, in terms of which minority students are there in the school. It was 77% or so Afro-American 20 years ago, and now it is 77% Hispanic students. That requires a different amount of resources to handle those kids. That's one. We know that, and that's one of the reasons why we want to change the way the state aid money is given out. But frankly, I've got to say that the board is one of the concerns that I have in the district, to make sure that there is a unity of purpose that all the kids can succeed in that district. And I'm not sure that in the 20 years I've been there that has been the case all the way through. It takes work to educate the board, to educate the voters, to make sure that they know what they're getting. And the charter school, as I said, the charter school thing is really absolutely out of control, that we need to have a different way of funding the charter schools. I mean, charter schools, as you know, have all the advantages in the world of taking students, special ed students, of ESL students, of students that act up, throwing them out of the school back to the district, and yet they don't always succeed better than the district that they came from. So there are problems, but not all charter schools are bad, and not all of them need remediation, but certainly some of the ones that were on Long Island need to be relooked at, and we try, but it's not always us it's not always the regents that are doing
A
it.
few more questions, Regent. Assemblyman Schiavone.
Good afternoon, Regent Tillis, and thank you for coming here and thanking you for putting yourself out again. I always appreciate people who spend their lives in education. I am a former educator, and I've worked in the Santa Maria School District for 30 years, and so I appreciate a lot of the things that you have done.
Which
as
district?
Center Moriches. Yeah. So one of my questions is about the 10th Judicial District. You have 125 districts, and it ranges from Hempstead to Selden to William Floyd, East Moriches, Riverhead, Orient, Sagaponack. What's your philosophy in serving all of the various districts with the various municipal structures as well as numbers of students and funding streams?
Well, as I said, I've been to more than 100 of the districts. I look at it as that I get a perk. The only perk that I get as a regent is when I go to schools and I'm allowed to read poems to elementary school kids. I've been doing that for 20 years. I did that with my own kids until they were too old for elementary school. Now I get to do it all the time. That's the only pay that we get as regents. We are volunteers. Anyhow, the one suggestion I'd make, but that's not really a suggestion that I think I see a future in. Long Island has twice as the population in our judicial district as any other place in the state, any other judicial district in the state.
Regent, I have a minute, and I want to get to my next question. I appreciate that. And I want to know what your thoughts are as far as proficiency measures versus growth standards. Could you speak to that a little bit? Where should we be going, and what's your personal philosophy?
Yeah, my personal feeling about it is what the regents are doing, which is moving, and we have pilots around the state that are looking at different ways of assessing students. We don't think the bubble tests, per se, the Regents tests in the past, have been very effective in measuring how much a student knows and how much they don't know. Proficiency tests, programmatic review, whether it's portfolio schools, which are in the city, and they've done very well. And what we're looking at, changing it to something more of a measure that's reliable.
Okay, and
Thank you.
lastly, I have 20 seconds.
You shouldn't be asking a question with 20 seconds left, but go ahead.
It's a quick one. I have a district with a charter school in my assembly district. Any changes to charter schools funding, is that the purview of the Board of Regents, or is it the New York State Legislature?
New York State Legislature.
Right, so that's us. And,
We have
okay.
tried, and we can only do so much.
Thank you, sir. Assemblywoman Salages.
Hello, Regent Tillis. It's so nice to see you.
Hello, Michelle.
So we know that we're in a new world with technology, as you mentioned, AI. And so we have to prepare our students for this future, whether it's workforce development or even just incorporating technology in their daily lives. So what are your thoughts on incorporating computer science into education curriculum?
Well, I think for one, and I was disappointed the governor did not fund the BOCES. We have a very strong BOCES in both Nassau and Western and Eastern Suffolk BOCES, perhaps the strongest in the state. And they're overflowing with students, and we don't have the resources for them. We can't pay the teachers enough to do that. And there was a suggestion we made to the governor, which she has not funded, on CTE work. We think CTE work is incredibly important, and we've been trying to beef up that section of the education work because not all students want to or should go into college if they don't want to. But it's funny, most of the students who go to BOCES end up doing very well in college because they're learning through relevant subjects. They're learning math through automotive skills. They're learning culinary schools, and they're learning math and chemistry and whatever else. Well, so I think, one thing would be to beef up the CTE programs, and whether it's within a district or whether it's BOCES. Right now, there's a tremendous need, and we see people looking, and we don't have enough resources right now.
I also want to discuss something that you alluded to. So some school districts are struggling with implementing IEPs and aren't providing appropriate accommodations. Parents and advocates are facing inconsistencies, lack of transparency, and they're trying to secure the right to education for their kids. How will the Board of Regents, and particularly you, hold districts accountable for not allowing students to have appropriate accommodations and fully fulfilling their IEPs and ensuring a compliance with state and federal law?
Most of the districts on Long Island do very well with the IEPs. I have a child that's gone through the CSE and got the IEP, and actually at age 30 is still using some of the accommodations and taking tests for teachers. They're pretty good. Where it drops off, it seems, seemingly, I'm not an expert on it, although I was chair of the special ed. We used to have a special ed committee on the Regents. And we saw that New York City was not always providing the CSE, honoring the IEP, and the hearing officers, there were questions about it. We've tried to reform some of that area of what New York City is, and the federal government's on our back because we're responsible for making sure that the federal law is observed.
Just on that note, I hope that we can hold some, please give me accommodations as other members were given accommodations, so I would appreciate it. Just this quick, please, if we can hold some of these districts accountable, there are students not receiving education. Parents are coming to me crying, saying that they are begging the school, they have to sue the school for accommodations. The Board of Regents needs to be more aggressive at making sure that our students with disabilities are receiving the education that they deserve.
I agree with you completely.
To close, Ms. Griffin.
Thank you, Chair Benedetto. Excuse my voice, it goes in and out. Thank you, Regent Tillies, for being here today. I appreciate all your positive impact you've made over a very long number of years, what you've done for schools on Long Island. And I have kind of like two questions, but they're combined into one. So one thing I wanted to mention, and I also thank you for your response on charter schools. At this point in time, as we've all discussed today, there's a lot of serious issues affecting our school districts now. We have more, coming at us, depending what the federal government does. And I wanted to know, what is your plan on, you have a very big district, as you've mentioned, our district is bigger than most. What is your plan to outreach to the legislators in Judicial District 10, school boards, superintendents, Nassau-Suffolk School Boards Association? And for example, last fall, I wasn't in office, but I saw the kind of real outburst of issue with the SED when they announced the regionalization initiative. And, it was all over social media, there was different stories, but the bottom line was school districts themselves were confused over what this meant. It was just very, it wasn't, the outlay of that wasn't communicated well. So once I was elected, I immediately went to Southwest Quadrant of all the districts that I represent in age 21, as well as other districts. And many of the superintendents expressed, and school board members expressed issues with this plan. The announcement of it, the quick timeline it needed, and also they felt it disregarded what they've been doing already. They do a lot of shared services. I can't speak for all of the districts on Long Island, but I know the districts in 8021 do already a lot of shared services. So people were a little, I couldn't blame them from being suspicious about this. And so in that type of situation, I wondered, going forward, there might be more changes with this regionalization plan. What is your plan to communicate what your position is? And then I'd like you to tell us what your position is. What is your plan to communicate that to legislators? Like, I was in office, now I've returned to office, so I would love to know, like, how we could communicate with you to know this is an issue for us, or what our districts are experiencing. So really just telling us your plan on those things would be helpful.
Yeah, I have over the years been doing town meetings with legislators all over Long Island. It's easier for me to communicate to people through a town meeting that a legislator, and it's easier for the legislator to talk about education issues if we do it together at a town meeting. So that's one way that I do it. I talk to virtually all the stakeholder groups, individually and also as groups. Long Island has several of these groups, and we could not have been clearer on the regionalization thing, except that, as I said, that the term regionalization was not the right term to use. Collaboration would have been a lot better. And so we went back, and I made the motion in December to make sure that all the districts knew that what we were asking for is not something that was going to harm them in any way, and that was only going to help those that wanted to do more sharing and more collaboration. And as I said, 80% of the districts in the state signed on to opt in. The only ones that really didn't were about half of the Long Island school districts. Long Island was about half and half. And we could have done a much better job at state ed in bringing that out. But I think we went back and tried to do everything we could to make sure that schools would not jeopardize in any way what they were doing and only could be benefited.
Thank you very
Regent
much.
Tillis, thank you. You have been more than patient. You've been sitting there for over an hour, as a matter of fact, and patiently asking our questions, and they were good questions, and you answered them well. We thank you for that. We thank you for your service on the Board of Regents, and in a couple of weeks, the Assembly will vote on this.
Thank you, and thank you for, but I should have brought up the fact that the Assembly and the Chair sponsored money for Holocaust education, which is so essential and which is now being used and to create best practices and strengthening of the standards for Holocaust education. It was very timely and very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent. Ladies and gentlemen, that ends the first session of the New York State Assembly hearing for the Board of Regents. We are at an end. Thank you for participating.